Yeah. Don't run. Fuck it. Eat some Munchos instead.
If you would have said to me 10 years ago that I'd be having this conversation publicly, first off, that I'd be married, I wouldn't have believed you. That I'd be having kids, I wouldn't have believed you. That I would be willing to talk about this, or even someone that someone else might look to help map it for them, I'd say you were completely insane. This is not really something, I'd rather talk about politics. I'd rather talk about the culture wars and all of these other things.
This is a political issue too, because we're trying to sketch out a pathway, I suppose. I mean, our culture appears to have decided that gay marriage is, well, I don't know if acceptable is the right word. It's become part of the structure of marriage itself. And so now the question is, okay, what does that mean?
I don't think anyone's confused about what that means. It just means that someone gets to marry who they love. That's it. It's the whole thing. Look at how serious this is. God, this is lame. This is so fucking lame, dude.
Hello, everyone. I'm here today with my colleague and my friend, Mr. Dave Rubin, host of the Rubin Report, a top-ranking online talk show known to many of you.
It's so serious. Why is this his demeanor at all times? Does this motherfucker have any fun?
He's an author, comedian, and TV personality best known for his political and cultural commentary. Mr. Rubin began his career, like so many people in the online world, as a stand-up comedian and continues to perform on stage in that guise throughout the U.S. In an effort to combat big tech censorship, Rubin founded Locals.com, a subscription-based digital platform that empowers creators to be independent by giving them control over their content and data.
Daily Wire
something
plus
we could
content.
all use. Dave's first book, Don't Burn This Book, Thinking for Yourself in an Age of Unreason,
terrible book,
was a New York Times bestseller. His second book, Don't Burn This Country, Surviving and Thriving in Our Woke Dystopia, was published by Penguin Random House on April 12th, 2022. Dave and I got to know each other first when he was one of the earliest public figures to support my efforts on the fight against compelled speech in Canada and elsewhere. And then more deeply, when he opened for me in 125 cities during my 2018 book tour. I concentrated
2018 book tour that was really fucking bad. His book sucks. Jordan Peterson's book is really bad and isn't good advice for anybody that needs help with any of their life issues, just so you guys know. I feel the need to reiterate that anytime Jordan Peterson comes up, because there are a lot of what I would call dum-dums that defend this man because they don't have luck with the ladies or something, and then have figured out a man that justifies their scapegoating of the ladies not fucking them, you know what I mean?
During that tour, talking to my audiences on many issues pertaining to responsibility and meaning, including family life. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Mr. Rubin currently resides in Miami with his husband, David Janet, and their rescue dog, Clyde. Good to see you, Dave.
It's good to see you, my friend. I have to say, this
Florida's not going to honor his marriage soon. Isn't that interesting?
This feels a little bizarre to me. We've done so many of these in so many different cities and countries and different chairs and on Skype and Zoom and every which way. And I'm usually reading your bio.
I know.
What do I mean? I mean, if the Supreme Court goes after Obergefell v. Hodges, which it seems like they're going to kick back states' rights for gay marriage. Florida is run by Ron DeSantis and the Republicans. There's no way they support gay marriage. As a resident of Florida, his marriage will be dissolved by the state.
Her ramble was just a gorilla.
So let's see what Dave does in that situation. So will mine. Yeah, I don't think it'll stand long. For the record, I mean, maybe it will, but I don't feel like people are going to deal with that for too long. You know what I'm saying? I think cat's out of the bag on that. You start telling people they can't be married to who they want, and you're affecting other people's lives and their livelihoods because it affects tax and benefits and stuff and families. I mean, good fucking luck.
This is bizarre, man.
I know. I don't usually interview you, but we talked together a couple of weeks ago.
It's not doomed. It's not doomed. It's a last gasp of a fascist boomer population that will surely someday perish. They're close. They're already close.
You have big changes coming up in your life, and we talked about having a serious conversation about that. I know that, and please correct me if I'm saying anything that isn't accurate, a lot of what I talked about when we were together on the 2018 tour was...
I tweeted years ago and have said publicly many times that Dave Rubin can be paid enough money to pretend to be straight.
Responsibility, or the meaning that's inherent in responsibility, and the kind of meaning that sustains people through crisis and catastrophe. And part of the propositions I was putting forward, I suppose, was that most of that meaning is to be found in responsibility, especially to other people. And I talked a lot about the role of family.
What do you mean they're never going to die? First of all, those two are not boomers, but yeah, no, they'll be dead
in people's lives. And at that point, you really hadn't been considering children, not seriously, although your partner, your husband, was more committed to that than you were. You've told me that your views changed to some degree, at least in part, as a consequence.
You have children. How many of you grew up with conservative parents? Show of hands. I did. You know what I'm saying? Just tossing that out there.
So us communicating.
That doesn't mean I'm willing to be complacent, by the way. That means that we're gonna have to do some things. But you know,
over the course of that entire year, so maybe you could fill people in on that front.
I know that they have children, and I know that some of them turn out the same way, but
and let them know what's
it's pretty clear that I mean 75% of the country disagrees with all the Supreme Court stuff that's happening right now, right? That's not a small number. That's 75% of all people in this country. That's 300 million people. You know what I mean, guys? Or 250 million people or something, like 275. Like, that's not a small number of people that disagree with all of this stuff. If it was closer to 50%, I would be much more worried. What I'm most worried about is the short term that we are living through, right? Don't get me wrong. Willing to be alarmed and willing to be like, this is fucked up, and you should do what you can to be safe. But I just don't think they don't have any of the support necessary. And whether it comes to violence or not, I think they lose. You know what I'm saying? I just don't think they have enough genuine will of people within these organizations to exist under that kind of, I mean, call it what it is. It's tyranny. I don't think people have the desire to live under that for a long amount of time.
Yeah, sure. Well, so David and I met 13 years ago yesterday. And I know it was yesterday because we met on my birthday, believe it or not. It was on my birthday. And then I got an even weirder one for you. It was at the Gay Pride Parade in New York City, which...
Wow, is that weird?
Now they've become sort of these sort of crazy circuses, but back then it wasn't quite like that. But I actually literally remember when he walked into the room and he was wearing an American flag tank top, which I'm pretty sure you can't wear to a pride parade anymore.
Have you guys been to a pride? There's there are patriotic people at all of these events.
But in any event, we've been together for about 12 years.
Yeah, and I don't know with the 2013 New York Pride. If I type in 2013 New York City Pride, what am I looking at? Come on, dude. 2013 New York City Pride. Oh. 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 That's crazy. That's pretty wild stuff. I just keep clicking. Oh wow. Holy shit. So trans, so what? What? In 2013? It didn't always used to be like this. In 2013? Wow. Look how many happy people there were. Isn't it interesting how happy people are when they're allowed to exist? Dave. Anyway. Hell yeah.
We've been married for 7 years. And I'm
First hit of Super Lemon Haze. We got some too. We got some Super Lemon Haze too. Hey, Chad, if you are partaking in the Devil's Lettuce today, hit that smoke check in chat.
46 now. So I grew up in a time when I never even, first off, I struggled with my sexuality for a long time. Partly, we've discussed this. I felt, people, it's sort of like a Homer Simpson quote that I love, and I know you can do the Simpsons thing all the time. I like my beer cold and my homosexuals flaming. And I sort of thought that was what it meant, that gay, even though I was attracted to men, that gay meant something else. Gay meant like you like the theater, or you like to dance, or you like Madonna or something. And
I am really not surprised that this was Dave Rubin's initial understanding of what gay is.
I didn't really care for any of those things. So I really had some distance between my feelings and my attractions.
Okay, why does Dave not understand? Has he talked to another gay person other than his husband? Does he not understand why those are associated with the gay community? Specifically, and I use the word community on purpose because these are the spaces that gay people were more accepted, and so it became part of their, in some parts of the country, especially East Coast and West Coast, became part of their culture. It just became synonymous with it because it was part of the only safe spaces they had to be themselves with like-minded people. So, you can like whatever you like. Being gay doesn't mean you have to like anything, and I don't think anyone nowadays thinks that. But Dave might, but old people might. But I don't think we think that.
And sort of the way the world could map to that, so to speak. And as a Gen Xer, there was nothing. We never talked about gay marriage. You didn't even talk about anything gay. There was nothing. Growing up in the '90s, there was no role model to look at.
Most famous '90s gay celebrities. I don't know. That was definitely a thing, right? Ellen came to mind. Oh, look at this clickbait thing. Cool. Ellen. George Michael existed. That's right. Melissa Etheridge. True. Nathan Lane. Classic. Katie Lang. I don't know. Singer. Okay. I don't know this person either. So you had a few. I know this one. Michael Jeter. Wasn't this... Am I crazy, or is this the Air Bud guy? Is that the Air Bud guy? Air Bud, 1997. Michael Jeter? Fucking true! Yep, nailed it. Anyway, so you could have looked up to lots of people. Anyway, Spider Kowski, thanks for going to Sky Search Archer. But isn't it nice, Dave? Isn't it nice that you have a lot more nowadays? I think so. I'm taking my evening HRT to your stream, and Jordan Peterson can't stop me. Hell yeah, Jotun. Hell yeah. Anyone else taking their HRT right now? Sir Ian McKellen, that's right. There's lots.
The only person that I ever saw on television that made any sense to me was in
that made any sense.
2 episodes of The Golden Girls. Blanche's brother comes out as gay, and he marries a cop. This is 1991.
Yeah, Golden Girls was very progressive. It was exceptional. And I don't know why Dave Rubin forgets how progressive it was.
NBC primetime. Obviously, gay marriage wasn't legal for another 30 years or something. But I had no role.
Unkept Flamingo, thanks for the 25 months.
Role models. I had nothing. So I sort of just never thought about getting married, having a family, truthfully. And I didn't even realize this till we were on tour. I never thought of the future. I sort of thought of my present all the time. And then when we were on tour, flash forward a bit, David and I got married. And even when we got married, we never really talked about having kids or even what.
Isn't it weird what subjugated minority groups don't decide to do because of their subjugation? Isn't it interesting as conservatives to learn that these marginalized groups that you've positioned so unethically, that they don't even consider having families? Isn't the whole point we want people to have families and to like live their life? This happens a lot. They're worried about population because people like me and younger aren't choosing to have kids, and it's because of the world the boomers have set up. If by the age of like 45 we have health care and all of this stuff enshrined, and I think the trajectory of the country is on a good path, I would be at least a coin flip on kids. I have no faith in the viability of a child that I would make. I have no way to guarantee their safety, and just the thought of creating a child to live in a country that could possibly treat them like a second-class citizen for the happenstance of their birth causes me to be very antinatalist. I absolutely do not want kids right now. I don't have the desire for fatherhood in general, but this definitely tips it over. Like, it would be essentially a coin flip for me because I feel like I would be a good parent, although I don't have the desire to be one. Does that make sense? Like, if it happened, I would try my best. You know what I mean? Like, that's pretty much where I'm at. But I have no... It actually scares me, the thought of it. It doesn't delight me to think about it. This is not how we grew up. When we grew up, our parents were like, and one day you'll have kids. And they'll have... It's like, I would love to be in a point in my life where I think that they would have a good life if I had them. You know what I mean? That's where we're at.
A family meant we knew we love each other and we have a great time together, and we love the same things, and I think in most ways we bring out the best in each other. Sometimes we bring out the worst in each other, and that probably that's probably good for
you're married.
Exactly. But then right around when we were on tour, so now this is 2018, David started talking about having kids, and we were texting a lot about it while we were on tour, and then I'm with you on stage every night, as you said, in 125 cities for about a year and a half. And you're constantly talking about the importance of family and the importance that for most people, and this is the way you would always say it, and it's hard to quote Jordan Peterson exactly, but something to the effect of that for most people to live a fully actualized life, that being a parent is a integral part of that. It is there's almost no exceptions to that. You would always make a point. There are some exceptions. You might find
but you have to be exceptional to have an exception to that. So maybe it's a third job and career, and that's sort of service to the broader community, and it's a third your intimate relationship, and then it's a third children and family. And those proportions can vary, but if you miss one of those, there's a big gap to fill, and maybe you can fill it. If another one of your endeavors has the expansive quality necessary.
Okay, so just understand. Let's just say that he's right. Okay, that most people would have the most possible fulfilled life if they had kids. I'm just going to steel man this. I'm not going to argue with them. It's whatever. Obviously, I don't think we agree with definitely you need that. But let's just say he's right. To steelman his position, would it not be his moral obligation to advocate then for laws and policies and social movements that incentivize the behavior that he wants, and to ensure that people would be secure in that decision? Because from a leftist point of view, if I want people to have kids, I know that the number one thing that keeps them from having kids in the short term is healthcare costs. That's the number one, because everybody knows that it's expensive to have a kid. The number 2 thing would be the long-term care of a child, like food, shelter, etc., that go into having a kid, not to mention healthcare costs again. And the third thing would be that their general well-being, right? How viable is their environment to thrive in? And so if you don't advocate for policies and laws and social movements that help this out, it is entirely nutless when you say people should have kids. It doesn't make any sense to advocate for one and then not facilitate that. It's too hard for people. This is why only people with Jordan Peterson type monetary success under capitalism are the ones that you hear really truly advocating for this kind of thing. They're the ones that are worried about population, mostly because these people own businesses and need workers and have a hard time hiring. You know what I mean? Can't find labor. Maybe we need more babies.
To occupy 2/3 of your time?
Here's what they want to do. Here's what conservatives want, and I think we should all be conscious of this. What conservatives want is for you to have kids, not because it's fulfilling, not because they think that it'll lead for a happy life. They want you to have kids for 2 reasons. Number 1 is that eventually they become a labor class. But number 2 is people love their kids and will do whatever it takes to keep those kids alive and as happy as possible. Which means that they will acquiesce to the powers that be to keep those kids alive. Meaning that you don't have time to advocate for yourself if you're working 2-3 jobs just to keep your kids alive. You don't have time to join a labor union or to mobilize for a social movement or to afford aid for somebody around or to provide any sort of other value to your community besides production into the fucking global machine. This is what conservatives want. They want you beholden to the system out of fear that your children will die. So they need abortion rights to be gone. They need you to not have the ability to wiggle out of these things. So a great thing that you can do in regards to bucking off the fucking yoke of these people, of the ruling class, is to not have kids and to not let them take these things from us by whatever means necessary. Some of us are more capable than that. And that means not just voting, of course, but it also means helping out local in your community, doing mutual aid when you can. Political advocacy in general is a good thing. If you don't have the stones for anything else. Like, I'm not a particularly, I'm not a physical specimen. I'm not going to be out here, like, in the streets punching cops, okay? I don't think that's a viable situation for me because I don't think I'd be very good at it. You know what I mean? So, like the commune, like after the revolution chat, we all have roles to fill. And I'm good at one thing, and that is talking. I'm good at talking, and not even great at talking. I'm just good at it. And I'm good at doing mutual aid with you guys and good at that. And then if it comes to the street shit, I'll be out there with you. But just know that I'm gonna need one of you fit motherfuckers to back me up, okay? Raising 3 socialists in a red state's fun. I mean, we can take you in Michigan. We'll take you. Come on up. Come on up to Michigan. If you are a leftist, come to Michigan, okay? I want you in my community. I want you around here. We have legal weed. We have almost a purely blue place, and we are one of the most integrated states in the union, and we have the most beach. That's true. We have more beach than Florida by a square mile. So I'm just saying, Michigan is absolutely wonderful. I love it here. The housing is cheaper than it is in a lot of places in America. Having lived in Florida and Idaho, my fiance is from Louisiana. I have some experience with this. It's a good place to have. I would love to have you and your votes and your ideologies here pushing these boomers out, getting rid of these Nazis, and having a good place, a place that where we can stake a line in the sand. We're also right next to Canada, for what it's worth, if we need to get out. There's enough corn. What are you talking about? In Michigan? You've clearly never been here. I grew up in a cornfield, essentially.
More power to you, I suppose, but it's a big risk. And so you also told me, Dave,
More
when
Michigan,
we were talking
good place.
about this before, that you started to think about being older as well.
It gets so cold. Global warming, Matt. Global warming. What's the temperature right now? It's 79 and sunny, bro. 79 and sunny. Are you kidding me? 79 and sunny? You're upset about that? Come on. What are you doing?
And I suppose then that with your concentration on the present
Michigan,
and the lack
bring
of
your
role
leftist
models,
asses
there
to
was
Michigan.
no real vision for
Vote
what it
in my
might be like
elections.
to...
Vote in my Michigan elections. Summers are beautiful. Have you never seen a Michigan coastline? Chat, I'm going to type in Michigan beach right now. Those are the only things I'm going to type in. Michigan beaches. Boom. Look at this. Are you fucking kidding me? I live here. I live here. This is where I live. Oh, Michigan, it's really cold. Where have you been like this? What, you just think we didn't do anything in the water, guys? Did you not think we had any beautiful places here? This place is gorgeous. Look at this sand. This is real. I think this is in Ludington. Huge sand beaches, dude. What are you doing where you're at? Why are you there? Get the fuck out of there.
Well, to grow old in the...
2 weeks. 2 weeks out of the year? Okay, go ahead. Live in Louisiana, dude. Live in Texas. Live in Florida. Live in Georgia. Go for it. But we'll take you here. We'll take you here when you discover that you were wrong.
gay community, I suppose.
Yeah, and you know, it's funny. The gay community. I hate that that
Yeah,
phrase.
yeah.
I know. Even
I know.
as you said it.
Do you have a bag of weed next to you? I don't think so. Tell you what, while we watch this...
It's like, it doesn't mean anything to me. I don't think
Legal.
of you as part of the straight community.
Right,
you know, it's just
right.
one of these things. We say these things. We don't even know exactly why we're saying them. But I didn't have that role model. I didn't have that. There was no map. There really
It's the
wasn't.
brotherhood of the marginalized.
I want to live in Hawaii. The American government's poisoned their water.
You know?
I guess that's a
Yeah.
group I could be part of, I
Yeah,
suppose,
yeah.
in some bizarre sense.
Having lived
but
in
even
Florida,
that
it's
is sort of
insane over there.
nauseating, I guess.
Florida
but-
is insane. It's not a good place to live.
But so we're on tour together, and
Make Texas blue, my
David's
friend.
texting me, and we're going back, and we're talking on the phone, and we're FaceTime, and it
Happy to
just
have
keeps
you, though.
coming up, and you keep talking about this on stage. And on top of everything else, I'm meeting all of the people that are attending the shows.
We do have potholes,
and you
that's
know
true.
this, the amount of people that were
They're getting
in
better,
new
though, actually.
families, or that the wife was pregnant for
Gretchen Whitmer has been doing a fantastic job as governor of Michigan. I'm not even going to lie. She wasn't my choice either. She was my second choice.
the first time. And I'm seeing the joy on these people's faces. All of this is hitting me. And then you keep saying this thing that for most people, they have to do it. But there are these exceptions. And I kept thinking, well, wait a minute. Could I be the exception that I could live a fully actualized, best possible life without having kids and at the same time be married to someone who wants kids? Then what am I even
right,
married
right.
for?
Well,
what was the
right. Well, that does beg that question, doesn't
Right.
it?
So now
Because-
these things are really hitting each other, and because I had never
You'd be
the
leaving
map
your family
wasn't there,
behind.
the road map just wasn't there.
Oh, you mean your place? Hey, I get it. If you want to stay, stay. If you got nothing left keeping you there, though, highly suggest Michigan, chat. I grew up here. I mean, I got to be honest. It's the best place I've ever lived, and not because I'm biased. I moved away because I hated it. I thought I hated it. It's a great place. I was like, it's cold. It's not that cold. I've been cold. It gets colder in fucking Minnesota, North Dakota. It gets colder in Idaho. This is not that cold. It's cold here. Don't get me wrong. I mean, it is cold, but it's not like Canada's colder and further north.
There, I started going, man, I
We
really
got lake
have to
effect.
think about this now. And I remember one night we were
a great place.
you were on stage, and I had the best seat in the house.
smoking
every
weed
night
right
because
now
I'm
from
just
here,
off
Chad.
stage left, so I'm
What are
basically
you smoking?
watching
Stage
you.
right is actually better.
Stage right, I guess. Yeah, I suppose it depends which country we were in. But I'm,
Yeah, Rubin.
I'm basically watching you from behind, so I have sort of the back view of you to the crowd. So I genuinely felt that
place.
every night that I was part of
The
the show
summers are
every night in
beautiful.
that sense.
Spring is
part
great.
of the
Fall
audience.
is nice.
And I remember you said it one more time, and I thought, all right.
What city? If I could live in any city in Michigan, it'd be Traverse City, but that's a higher class place with a lot of money. They have like a culinary school there and everything, and like celebrities vacation there. There, Grand Rapids, Detroit is on the come up, although I wouldn't live in some parts of it because of the poverty mixes with crime, of course. Saginaw, Flint, stuff like that. Hey, happy to see fighters in the southern states, though. There's a misconception with liberals are like this, where they go like, fuck it, the South already sucks. There are people in the South that need help and need your advocacy. So, I don't plan on abandoning them at all.
I have to do this. I have to do this. And that's why it was always incredibly honest when I would say to the crowd that being on tour with you, for every reason that they were there, that you helped these people change their lives, that you did that to me too. But now, and I think the purpose of this conversation, which, by the way, if you would have said to me 10 years ago that I'd be having this conversation publicly, first off, that I'd be married, I wouldn't have believed you. That I'd be having kids, I wouldn't have believed you. That I would be willing to talk about this, or even someone that someone else might look to help map it for them. I'd say you were completely insane. This is not really something. I'd rather talk about politics. I'd rather talk about the culture wars and all of these other things.
Jordan doesn't want you to be a gay married dad. He wants you to be in a straight relationship and making your own babies.
This is a political issue too, because we're trying to sketch out a pathway, I suppose. I mean, our culture appears to have decided that gay marriage is, well, I don't know if acceptable is the right word.
God,
it's become part of the structure of marriage itself. And so now the question is, okay, what does that mean? And that certainly opens up the question on the child front, because I mean, in some ways, marriage is the union of two people, but in a possibly more fundamental way, it's the union of two people to provide the foundation for children.
Right.
And
that's a terrible, terrible definition of it. You can get married and not have children, Jordan. Like, what the fuck? What about Ann Arbor? Great place. It's going to be more expensive because the University of Michigan is there. Same thing with Lansing as the capital. So Michigan State University is there. In Saginaw, we have a university. Midland's pretty nice. Bay City is nice. Anywhere in mid-Michigan, you can find a decent home. If you are not white, I suggest Saginaw, Flint, are two. Again, Saginaw is one of those places where the housing is cheap right now, and it's a very integrated place that could use new, fresh people. And it has local, like, if you're worried about education, there's many schools around here for adults and for children. It just depends on the work you're doing. It depends on like, where you can find jobs and stuff. But the better people that we have, obviously, the better things are going to get. Kalamazoo is a good place. I don't spend a lot of time in Kalamazoo. It's pretty close to Illinois, so I'm trying to keep my distance. They ever fixed the water problem in Flint? It's fixed-ish. In that accountability doesn't seem to be a thing, but there's actually a black-owned construction company fixing all the pipes.
I would say that's actually paramount. I mean, our society tends to flip that around, and we tend to think of marriage as something that, well, you find
What about for trans people? Hannah lives here.
Partner right for you, and you live happily ever after.
Flint is also more than just where they had pipe problems. Oh yeah, Flint's a big city where lots of stuff happens. There's lots of cool stuff in Flint. Yeah. You can get trans healthcare here. Obviously, it's not going to be as good as somewhere that has universal healthcare, but you can get trans affirming care here. Our governor is currently fighting for all of these rights, and a lot of the people here this is a big union place. Unions started basically didn't start here, but like unions are the fabric of our fucking like state. Like if you think about Michigan and you're not from here, you probably used to think about it as an auto town. Maybe you still do. I don't know what the perception is now, but Ford, Chevy, etc. GM, Fire Killer, XX. Thanks for the prime, dude. Appreciate it. First timer. If anybody else is having a good time and would like to be a first-time subscriber here, look, am I going to deny you? Of course not. I'd love it. We love first-timers here. Happy to have you. Have the best emotes in the game.
Well, no, not exactly.
Yeah.
Or maybe exactly if you also understand that living happily ever after means living for other people in many ways, particularly your children. And then of course that complicates the issue on the gay marriage front, because as we're going to talk about, it's also more technically difficult to have children.
Also, if you have a Michigan driver's license, you can go to Canada without having a passport, for the record. Did you know that? This is true. We have a deal with Canada. So, I'm just saying, moving to Michigan is also a get-out-of-free card. Rob Blum, thanks so much. Give one to Magic Dab, Official Josh Woods, and Shiro. I appreciate that. Michigan Sunlock.
If you're a homosexual couple.
Right. So if you take just the marriage part first, meaning that two people are going to choose to share their life and live together, share a bed, et cetera, I would say culturally in America, we kind of moved past that. I mean, Trump ran, he's the first-time president. He was on stage with a rainbow flag. It was, and nobody cared. Or no, I shouldn't say.
What do you mean? How is Dave Rubin like this? Donald Trump is explicitly anti-LGBT. He literally just said, let God sort it out, like 2 seconds ago on the issue, taking the right-wing position. Like, I cannot believe him.
Say nobody cared, but enough people felt, okay, you let people live the way they want to put this down and move ahead.
Insane.
But you're right, that marriage has to do with something else. Otherwise the word marriage wouldn't mean anything. It's like nobody really cares if you live with your friend for the rest of your life or you live with a man or a woman. People.
No one really cares. Really, Dave? I think they do. They're trying to reintroduce sodomy laws. They're trying to put the government, big government, into your fucking bedroom. I thought this guy was a libertarian. They're trying to put the government into your literal living room, your bedroom, your fucking bathroom. They don't want you to fucking take your. They don't want to let you put stuff in your own body. They don't want to let you do your own thing with your own life. Seriously, Dave? This is the biggest possible government.
People do this all the time in life, and it doesn't really matter. So what really is the purpose of really living with somebody and really being with somebody and sharing your life with somebody is to build something lasting, something that you've learned and know and were taught, and that you can hand that on to the next generation, and hopefully they can attain and retain some of that.
Permanence in your life too, right?
Yeah.
That multi-generational permanence stretching indefinitely into the future. And I mean, part of what marriage does, I think technically it's the psychological equivalent of what sex does genetically. If people mix gametes.
Oh my fucking God. Chat, what do you think about this though? Huh? You ever seen anything so damn cute in your life? I should turn the brightness down. What a cute little boy. He's under my desk right now. He was scared of the fireworks, and he fell asleep. But he's right here. I just can't, the camera won't go there. But he's just a goddamn cutie, dude. He's a cutie patootie. He's laying down on a little blankie. He's right here. Laying in front of the fan to stay cool. I love that dog. I had to show you guys. The government already in my uterus. I didn't give consent. They're freeloading on their rent. I charge $2,000 a month. Okay.
Partly because
they are living in your uterus
to ensure variability and to stop the propagation of parasites. That's why we don't clone. But there's that mixing as well tends to ensure
it's going to slurp up your gametes.
Deviations from genetic health are minimized. And so the same...
Dude, if you have to close your eyes and concentrate on what you're saying super hard all the time, I get it sometimes, all the time, I feel like maybe you're not a very good communicator.
Thing happens on the psychological front, I would say, is that each person has their own idiosyncrasies, and some of those lead them down the garden path to terrible places. But if you're with someone else and you have to negotiate with them constantly, then that opens up the possibility of you mutually modifying each other's personalities so that you both become healthier, and that your joint existence is a kind of, can be a paragon of sorts. And then that's what the child interacts with, is that united front of the two parents.
Right.
And so you get that longevity of view, which I think helps to mature you, but you also get the opportunity to become more fully fledged as a psychological being. And then I think that's furthered as well. I've often thought...
Okay, so what he said, if you couldn't follow that, is he said when two people love each other a lot, they tend to... make each other more whole as people, and they tend to have to negotiate between the two. And then at the end of it, he said, as a psychological, just as a person with emotions, it's nicer to spend time with somebody else. Usually, a lot of people like companionship. It's good for people. Okay, wow. Why does he have to say it in such a way that makes everybody just want to die? I like having these chud buckets telling me why I should live with people and be in a relationship. Yeah, I know, right? Like, if you don't want companionship, 100% valid as well. I have no idea why he thinks that people need to live this certain way. He lives this way, and he thinks it's good for him. So he thinks because it's good for him, it's good for everybody. And that's just a crazy person's point of view. It doesn't make any sense. I don't know, man. Like, I like the way I live, and this is not the way that other people would like to live. I'm sure someone who likes to go mountain climbing would hate to live my life. I don't climb mountains. Like, if you're a big mountain head, is that what they're called? Big mountain enjoyer? You watch Free Solo every day? It's like your Star Wars? Bro, I think we're not going to see eye to eye on how to live life, and that's okay. Because you get to live differently. I don't see how choosing to climb mountains is any different from choosing to fuck men, except that you don't need a mountain's consent to climb it. There's like one extra step. Can I have consent? That's it. Like, how is it different?
And said this, and I do believe it's true. It's very, very difficult to mature until you have children, and there are other ways of maturing, but it's hard. And the reason it's hard, I think, is because you're not mature until someone else is more important than you. And it's...
You know what? I think I might agree with a portion of that. But not like the children thing. Like, I think there is a level of maturity that I didn't understand until like, not to get mushy, chat, until Sarah. Don't let her hear it. She'll get too cute. But I mean, seriously, like loving somebody in a way that is sort of like more than you thought you like. You thought you were in love with people before, and then you meet somebody, and then it grew over time. I don't know how to describe that, but I do think there's a level of it's less maturity. I would say existential awareness. I think from an existential perspective, it's given me perspective. Does that make sense? Yeah, like something about empathy, but I don't think he's saying it right. Like, I just wanted to. I don't know. It felt important for me to talk about that, I guess. I think there is a level of understanding of. I think there's a level of learning to be kind in a way when you love somebody. Like, actually love them, and that can be it can be familial, you can be your child, it can be romantic, it can be platonic. I'm sure this manifests in different ways, but when someone truly is more important than you, like I would die for Sarah, I don't think I've really felt that way about another person so strongly. I've definitely felt like I would protect this person with my life, but I've never felt like so convicted in it before, if that makes sense. Like, for the first time in my life, I'm genuinely worried about, like, my family in a way that that I think he would think is like, yeah, that's the man's role, is to protect his family, but it's not how it manifests. Does that make sense? Maybe for some of you it doesn't. Maybe you're too young yet, because I definitely, when in my 20s, I didn't understand this. But this, get Peterson pilled? No, I expressly disagree with how simple he's putting it and how he thinks that it can only be manifest through children. That's I'm expressly you're still being corn pilled. It's not Peterson pilled. I think he's close to saying something correct here, but it just didn't work. Anyway,
it's possible that would happen with
we get
your
deep
wife,
here
your
sometimes, chat. We get deep here, okay?
husband,
Also, I smoked
but
weed.
not like with children.
Well,
That's
I've been
a whole
thinking
different
about
thing.
that. So, we're about to have our first child in a month, and I've been thinking about that a lot lately. Like, it's just something that's constantly stirring in my head, that I feel like I've sort of gotten to the end of where I can get mature in my maturation process. Not that I can't change or get better at this or that or something, but I do feel like I'm at the end
Chat,
of one
did you remember to take your corn pills today? You can tell because there will be a cob next to your name.
phase right now. I very much feel that. And I think I'm feeling it more and more each day
That's how
as
you
we
can
get
tell.
closer to August 22nd, which is the due date. But the first part, you can take, whether it's a straight relationship or a gay relationship, the dance that a couple can do and the way that they can mature each other and
Being
love each
gifted a
other and
corn
all of
pill
those
is
things.
perfect. Much like HRT, we are fine with you dosing yourselves with cobs. Same thing. Yeah. You can e-beg for your cob as well if you're one of the people that can't afford your own cob. A cob may be provided for you should the Cornmune see it fit.
That's one thing. But
You can also ba-woo in chat. You can go ba-woo and do the corn whale sound to ask if any corn whales can show up. Chat, you can try to get a booty party started, and we can stop watching this for a
the
second.
piece with the kids,
It's all up to you guys.
with building this
You
sustainable
guys control
thing,
this stream,
it's
not
not
me.
something that has been proven in society yet, really.
Also,
There
Sarah and I should
obviously
eat
are
tonight.
gay couples with kids.
What should we eat? I kind of just want... I know I ate pizza yesterday, but I kind of just want pizza. That's not true. Anytime, Dave.
Yeah.
And this has been happening for decades. But it really is sort of unseen at the moment, which is why we wanted to have this conversation. And I was like, boy, I don't even know that. In some ways, I don't know that I'm the person that's supposed to have this conversation, but maybe that's exactly why I'm
Well, we're
supposed
both
to have this
exploring
conversation.
it, and trying to figure it out. I mean, maybe we can talk
Yeah.
about exactly how it came to be that you'll have a baby in your household in 6 weeks. Talk about what you had to do to make that happen and
2 million thanks for 24 months.
why you made the decisions that you made and what advantages and hazards come along with that.
Sure.
Advantages to
So
both.
first, technically, because there are
Anybody LCD? No.
biological differences between men and women, I don't want to get us canceled on YouTube, but it actually is true, Jordan.
Are we
we could
canceling
not
him for that?
biologically have kids. So, just ourselves.
Everybody knows that.
So we
Fundamentally, they misunderstand what trans is. It's an acknowledgement of the biological incongruence with the expectation on gender. That's it.
we talked about adoption for a little bit. We did. We both felt that the genetic component of this was important to us. So for a little while, we did.
Ulven aspiration. You don't know if they have a Triton mod, do they? Like that I could be a Triton in character creation.
Debated going
find
with my
one,
sister's
I'll suck
egg.
you.
We thought we'd have 2 kids. That was the,
I'll type
the
suck
general
into chat. That's
thought
me
process in
sucking
the
you.
beginning. And we thought we could take
This,
some
but
of
I'll
my
tag you.
sister's eggs, and she's a mother now. She's actually pregnant.
No,
with
in
her
Baldur's Gate 3.
third.
Baldur's Gate 3. Never mind.
But that we could get her eggs, and then we would take
Conversation is
David's
more awkward than the worst first date.
sperm,
Oh,
and then
no.
we would have 2 children from that. After a
Baldur's Gate 1
long
is
time
probably
of
not
talking
that
about a year debating that back and forth and going through all that, there were a lot of ethical and moral issues, and my sister then would be the biological mother of my children. I mean, there were all sorts of things that we
Right.
were about to traverse.
Right, and that's all
That-
uncharted territory, right?
All sorts of
Yeah, his sister's their surrogate. I don't think that's weird.
yeah.
You think you know how that
I know
might
it could
go,
be
and you
gift.
think you know how it might go if you have goodwill.
You can't. I know you can't be a Triton in vanilla. but I don't know if there's a mod.
That does not mean that you know how it will go.
And I have to say, even that conversation, having that conversation with my sister, who was interested in, when we came to her, she was sort of flattered and honored that we were even considering it. But then, we said, why don't you sit with this for a little bit? And then suddenly she had a lot of those questions, and she was concerned if, she shows up to the birthday party and then feels this odd jealousy, or what if she suddenly wasn't happy with the way that we were parenting,
Right,
or
that's a big one.
or a litany of other things. So even going through that, and this obviously is not the way that we ultimately went about it, even that was sort of a maturation process, and what are we really trying to do here? So anyway, ultimately we decided to find an egg donor. I mean, basically it sounds sort of glib or something, but it's sort of like Tinder. I mean, there are these websites that exist where the egg donors are on the site, and we tried to find a girl.
Tinder.
I didn't really care that
I
much.
think it's probably a little bit more like OK Cupid or something, right?
About the pedigree in terms of did they go to an Ivy League school or anything like that. We wanted to find a girl who obviously was physically healthy, most importantly, that didn't have major issues in terms of genetics and all that sort of stuff. That we thought that sort of looked like the type of girl that we might be with. So I didn't want a 6'5" Swedish woman, let's say. And so we have one egg donor, meaning there were multiple eggs. And
they mean just physically similar to them. I think that's, that sounded a little fucking weird, but I understand the impetus of two people who can't make children together wanting a child that resembles them, so they don't have to constantly do the thing, I guess. But sure, I sure. Okay, he got dangerously close to some stuff there, didn't he? I don't know. I don't like the way he phrased that. I'm gonna give him the most charitable interpretation. I don't think he meant it in a racist way. Maybe he did. I don't know. Hopefully not.
We fertilized one with David's sperm and one with my sperm, and we'll have 2 kids. Right now we have 2 surrogates that are pregnant. And even talking about this, it's like, man,
it's kind of cute. Honestly, that's kind of cute, though. I love that for gay couples. Wow. If you want to be parents, one each, kind of cute.
This is all kind of crazy stuff. Putting aside gay or straight related to all of this, the whole surrogacy thing is it's fascinating that there are, first off, women who are willing.
Now, here's the thing. If one of those pregnancies, I'm not wishing this. If one of those pregnancies goes wrong, are they going to force that surrogate to die instead of abort? If a miscarriage happens, is it an abortion? You and Hannah tipped me over and became an atheist. Thank you. I mentioned earlier that I'm depressed and had a bad day on Amazon and sure myself is to be nice and thank. Oh, I see. Yeah, happy to help. Glad that you saw the light, as it were. Happy to have you.
To donate their eggs. And, I hear a lot of people, and we talked about this. There's this criticism of somehow that you're buying the egg and you're renting the woman, meaning the surrogate.
Yeah.
And of course, there is a financial component to it. There is. I'm not denying that there isn't. Yeah. I can tell you, having gone through this process, and we had a previous surrogate who had 2 miscarriages. They were
a fucking murderer, a murderer. Holy shit! It's called sacrifice. That's true. That's right. It's called sacrifice.
We're also, we were doing a lot of this during COVID. And during COVID, there were all sorts, the miscarriage numbers were through the roof. There were all sorts of weird things. The quality of the eggs wasn't great. They don't know exactly. They'll have to study this for years in terms of what actually happened. But I can tell you that the women who offer to be the surrogates and who are offering their eggs, they are not doing this for the money. There's all sorts of other ways that you can make money, that anyone can make money. They are doing it. They talk about that they have this ability and this gift that they can do. A lot of them, there are some that won't do it for same-sex couples because of their own ethical or religious views. The surrogates that we found, one of them had a gay brother. I mean, there were all sorts of things that they feel that they can help other people have a family, and what a better gift there is. But all of that aside, all of the science and genetics and all that, it leads us to this thing.
I'd like to see how many of them would do it for free. Yeah. or at zero cost to them, just a net neutral. You know what I mean? Surrogacy is a job, sex work is work. I had never considered surrogacy as sex work. I mean, I guess it uses the organs, but it's not like the same thing, right? Maybe it is. Maybe it's called that.
Thing, which I think is the heart of what we're trying to talk about here, which is
uses a sexual
so we're going to be a
organs, not
family
the way
with
that
two
most
fathers
sex
and no mothers, and what does that really look like? You know, it's very
Yeah, but no fucking Tritons though, right? Isn't that lame? I ask because Sarah and I we play Dungeons and Dragons on this here channel, chat. And if you wanted to tune in on Thursdays at 7 p.m. Eastern time, you would see the best D&D in the game. I'm not gonna lie to you. I maybe ran the best chase scene ever in D&D history just this last Thursday. You know? Kids need a mother too. So if their mother dies, do you just give them a new mother? So what happens if a mother dies in childbirth? You're like, no single dads, not allowed? You see how dumb that is? God, you're stupid.
easy to just say, okay, gay people should have kids, or gay people should get married, and gay people should have kids.
It's Minwersal Live. Hey, bud, can you do me a favor and just, when you type it out before you press send, give it a look. Give it a look-see. Look it over. You know? Do some copy editing. Just do your best, you know? Just give me... It's Minwersal Live! Cool. I don't know what that means. I don't even know what I can't even suss what you maybe meant. So, yeah. Check the boppity!
It's easy to say an awful lot of things.
As you said, it's not that easy for a gay couple to have kids.
Right.
It's very complicated.
So putting aside if you're going to go the surrogacy route, putting aside all the finances and all of that stuff, that eliminates an awful lot of people.
Dr. Gamble thinks you want to pick a Lloyd.
Do it.
There you go, bud. Now you have a subscription.
But fortunately, we're able to do.
Now every time you talk, you can put a Kirk W after it. Look. Put a Kirk W. You can understand me, whit my bad grammar. Don't lie. I can't. That I could, but that sounds like it was on purpose. I'm gonna give you a little bit of a hot 600. Have a nice little tenor there. Enjoy that, and then I'm gonna watch this a little bit more. And if you have anything unhinged to say, I'll get to it in 10 minutes.
Do it, okay? But now it gets us to the real part here, which is that now we're gonna live in a house.
No, I have no idea either. They're just a fucking weirdo. We get those a lot here, where it's just a guy who vaguely disagrees with me about something, usually something dumb because they're conservative, and they don't have the brain fuel to like put it into words, and they can't just grunt, right? That won't come across. Like, look. If I just go like. Does that convey anger to you? It doesn't. It just doesn't work in written. So, Maizelbub. Kobold Investigator, who's a journalist. That's fucking awesome. Love it. Des DeNovas, thanks for the 7 months. Guys, you should come check out Charisma Saves. You guys should come check out Charisma Saves. Look at this. Self-shill. Charisma Saves. Look at it.
Like anime
stuff, you
words,
said?
and
Look at this. We have a whole thing. We have a whole thing. Look at this with a setup and everything. It's really good. Anyway, you should go check it out. It's Charisma Saves. We're here on Thursdays, and you would really like it because it's really good. And I'm a really good DM, and they're really good players. It's just really good all around. Isn't that great?
Household with two fathers. There's going to be no mother involved, and what does that really mean?
Right, well,
and I understand some of the reservations there. Yeah.
Well, so we do know.
Should we come? You can.
We do know that children who are breastfed.
I'm apprehensive about watching any Christmas Days because the first episode didn't start at the beginning of your story and I don't know what's going on. What are you talking about? Yes, it does. What are you talking about? It starts at the first episode. Hello? Hello? Here we go. First episode. There's the first one. Here. Enjoy. Very first episode. Right at the beginning, level 0. Literally, she is not level 1 right now. So, and we cosplay. Look at that. So, I'm just saying. And I'm looking all like severe. Yeah. Anyway, it's good. You should go check it out. There's the first episode.
Do better.
Yep.
I believe that 1 year of breastfeeding is equivalent to, I think breastfed kids have a 5-point IQ advantage, and 1 point IQ is worth 1 year of education.
I have
Based
1 point of IQ is worth 1 year of education. Okay, my IQ is 300, okay? And with an IQ of 300, are you telling me that I have 300 years of education in here? Sheesh. It's actually 300.
2 freezers in my garage, 2
Exactly
industrial
300.
freezers full of breast milk.
I actually got some questions wrong just to get exactly 300. That's how smart I am.
Because
Right,
that's
right.
who-
So-
David
so-
has done all the research on this.
Right. So another complication, but okay. And we don't have data. We don't really have data on
69
motherless
20
children
IQ. Sheesh.
raised by
lot.
fathers from infancy, right? Because it's pretty rare. I don't know if there's literature pertaining to that at all. We do have a literature on mother-headed families without fathers, and the data there are crystal clear.
It's interesting why they...
It's not good to be fatherless.
Do you know what I think is worse? Being poor. Do you think... Okay, what about this? What if you gave every single mother... What if you gave every single mother the exact salary of the the discarded father in whatever circumstance that happens? So... Do they like... Do you think they'll do good or bad? I feel like they'll do pretty good. Having an entire other human salary in the home in a system where we commodify survival necessities. I wonder why people with more than one income do better. God, it's just it's pretty hard stuff here to conceive of. Put me in a presidential debate immediately.
Now, that doesn't...
I may not do the smart good, but I definitely talk like a person. Like, if you're just a normal guy, and like, how do you think like this?
mean that there aren't some women who are struggling
so
mightily
dumb,
as
dude.
single mothers who don't do an outstanding job. But what it absolutely and 100% means that on average, that's suboptimal and badly suboptimal. And so
Yeah, regardless of gender, yeah, it is.
it seems to me that the minimal stable requirement for ensuring the psychological health and financial viability of a child is something like a nuclear family structure.
Yes.
Minimally, right? So you need a mother and a father, or at least you need 2 people, one who plays a maternal role and one who plays a paternal role, or that they split those. 2 seems to be better than 1. Now,
But why does he think it has no tie to economics whatsoever? Why does he think it only has to do with, like, their mentalities as people? Like, I don't think he would describe my mother as particularly feminine when it comes to what I learned from her. She's a drinker, a smoker, she swears like a sailor, and she's the person that loves me and my brother most between the 2 parents. Like, my dad worked really hard and wasn't around, and then was an alcoholic and, like, he was a bad dad and a good father. You know what I mean? Your mom sounds hot. If you want to have sex with somebody whose old snatch is like an ashtray, you go hit on my mom.
how much of that's linked to sex, we also don't know. You know, it seems that the feminine role is more accepting slash nurturing.
What that ass shussy do?
You see that with the proclivity of women to be more agreeable temperamentally. That kicks in at puberty. And so I think that you have to be accepting and nurturing, especially in your attitude toward.
So it seems to me the more parents, the better. Polycules are the only way to parent. Yeah, makes sense.
Towards infants before they're
that makes sense.
Mobile. So say
Who
before
wants to be
6
our
months,
wife?
before 9 months. An infant does no wrong. It's 100% acceptance. The problem with that is that that's not true as the child develops, because it has to switch to more of an encouraging role. It's like,
Sarah, are we in the market for a trad wife? It's the only way Jordan Peterson will accept our lifestyle.
out of your dependency into the world. And the paternal spirit encourages that development. Now, mothers can do that too. But
I wish I had poly parents. You know what's interesting? You should check out, if you've never watched The Expanse, one of the characters does have a polycule as parents. And I believe, I'm not 100% on this, I think all of them are either genetically, yeah, it's Holden, either of them are either genetically his parents, or only one of them is and it's a polycule. I can't remember. Yeah. Anyway, he's the hero of the story. They mixed all of them together. Yeah, so he's got like 8 parents or some shit like that. So anyway, yeah.
But roughly speaking, women tend to do the nurturing thing more, and men do the encouraging thing more. So now the question is, how do you mediate? How do you manage to fulfill both those roles?
And if you have a Twitch Prime account, you can use not only Twitch Prime to watch The Expanse, all 5 seasons. I think there's 5, which I actually do think is really good. But you can also give me their money by Prime subbing. You should do that. By the way, ad starts in 50 seconds, so get your subs in right this second, or you're going to watch those. Godspeed, adders.
In the absence of heterosexual arrangement.
Right. So now naturally we understand that there are men who are more nurturing and women who aren't as nurturing and all of those things. Now you know David pretty well, and we've been out to dinner with Tammy many times, and you know him. He is incredibly warm and nurturing and loving and deeply cares about all of those things. And I'm telling you, he is reading about skin-to-skin contact every day and all of the breast milk stuff and everything. And I know he will have a huge percentage of the stuff that a mother would bring. But I also know it's not all of it.
Well,
and
also,
he knows it's
the
not
other
all
thing,
of it.
too, is that you guys have to do that conscious.
Dude, goblins next to the biddies. This man, baby, trash fire.
Yes.
Right. With research in hand, and to build up that proclivity that would be there more automatically, arguably, with a mother, and all the psychological and hormonal transformations she undergoes, and that transition into breast milk production and all of that, which is a fundamental transformation in a woman's biology and her psyche. Now, you and David have ample resources at hand, financially and intellectually, that enable you to traverse this pathway as well as anyone is likely to
Dumb, poor gays don't get to have kids, though.
do it. But it is very interesting and salutary to hear you also talk about the complications. So on the feminine side, let's say, you think you have the nurturance angle well covered. You talked to me a little bit about having women around in your infant and child's life as well.
So David's mom is going to be living with us for a few months at the start, as well as his sister, who's taking care of young babies already. But now I understand that they're not the biological mother, but they will be there. You know, we're going to have night nurses also for a few months to help the babies get on a normal sleep schedule. But these are all the pieces that we're trying to put together. But can we just back up for 1 second? Because I think before we go too deep into just the parental part of this, there was another thing that came up when we sort of roughly sketched out this conversation over dinner that I think is important, which is that if you weren't to allow gay people to either get married and enter relationships that will last the test of time, or have children to really last the generations, then what are we reducing these people to? And I think that's a huge part.
Screw bucket, thanks for 1 miles.
Of this for me, that I think had the world not shifted to be a little bit kinder, had I not maybe been on tour with you and come to some of these realizations, or found someone in the world that I wanted to put their needs above my own, that I could have been left to a life that would have been sort of purely narcissistic or self-destructive or anything. I used to live in...
Well, I don't see how that, in some sense, I don't see how that can be, there can be any alternative
Yes.
to that if there isn't another pathway forward.
Yes,
Right? So,
and so that's to me, that's like the unknown road that I'm going down right now, that I'm choosing to go down that unknown road of, it can be better than that, right? As I said, we have 2 or 3 couples that are gay parents that are doing some version of this, but we don't have that model. But then when, we lived in West Hollywood is the gayest place on earth, rainbow crosswalks and the whole thing. And to me, I would see these guys that were, 65, 70 years old, that all they had basically was that they worked out,
Because they're 65 or 70 years old, Dave. They weren't allowed to get married and have families when they were your age. What do you mean? What? They weren't allowed, David. Please, for the love of God. Say they're 70 years old, say they're 65 years old, they were in their mid-50s when they weren't allowed to have kids. Like, what the fuck?
spray tanned and got hair plugs. They had their little dogs and they partied on the weekends and probably chased the same sexual escapades that they were chasing 40 years ago.
They weren't allowed!
Right,
And
so
it's not a
sustained
life.
adolescence.
Yeah, and it's not a full life. And I actually, it's like, I have like almost like a visceral feeling when I talk about it. Because
I have a visceral feeling when you talk about it too, Dave.
I know that could have been me. So when I see these people...
Oh my God. Except you were granted the rights of marriage because of progressive movements that advocated on your behalf.
They're at this point are against gay marriage, but in general there don't seem to be that many voices publicly about that anymore.
So here's a rough question. So do you think both the flamboyance, now I want to get into this in some detail, but the flamboyance that's been historically associated with the male homosexual community, sorry about that, and the promiscuity, to what degree do you think that both of those are a consequence of not having a more integrated and conservative path potentially open in front of people?
They don't have the option to take a conservative path, Jordan. They weren't allowed families for generations, and they weren't allowed to build a culture of familial rearing. How are you like this? Hello? They were forced into the margins of society and found community in these spaces. And part of flamboyance is literally just, like, it's in the language that people use to identify each other and to celebrate sameness and to have community in the same way that you have any sort of ways that you talk with your friends. Like, it just happens. There were ways for people to code this so that the normies wouldn't understand. There were ways that they built this into media. There's a famous, I forget, it was like a radio host in the UK or something. I forget the example, but was essentially using like gay lingo to hide it from the masses. I think Sarah was watching a video with some historian YouTuber, and I think she was going through this, and it was really interesting. But have a wonderful night, Mo. Wait, you know what I'm talking about, Sarah? You remember? James Somerton. No, it wasn't a guy. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but you mean the person doing the radio show, James Somerton? Maybe, yeah. Yeah, that might have been it. Yeah. I don't know the name, so yeah, that might be what you're talking about.
I think it's a huge amount that probably will never be fully explained. If people don't have an ability... Look, what was the gay rights movement for in the 70s in New York City and Stonewall and all of those things? It was these people just wanted to be able to get married. That was part of it. But it was also that they wanted to be able to go to a bar that wasn't underground, that wasn't hidden, that wasn't, this seedy thing. But that's what they had to do because they were getting raided by the police. And this was going on, obviously, in other countries, and it was going on.
So he understands the history of this.
Before that. But they wanted some sense of normalcy. If you don't leave people some little seeds of normalcy, then they will do all sorts of things.
Yeah, it was this video we're not gonna watch it right now, but it was this video, and it was Jessica Kellgren-Fozard. This video was what we were watching.
So the flamboyant part, there's two parts you're asking
Yeah.
about. So the flamboyant part, I'm just not built that way. I'm not. Sometimes I used to, when I was first sort of coming out or coming to grips with myself, I actually liked guys that were kind of flamboyant because to me, it was like, oh, they're so who they are. Like they had just let go of every sort of normal cliche or something like that. They're so
Right,
who they
so
are.
you saw in that
I didn't
kind
watch
of
the Big
existential courage.
Yeah, and yet they always really like, generally gays, they like straight acting. That's a real thing with gays. They like straight acting. So guys always liked me because I didn't seem gay, whatever that meant. And I thought it sort of meant that I was broken in a weird way because it made me feel like a sort of like double freak in an odd sense.
Right.
Because I was struggling.
Too queer for the straight community and too straight for the queer community.
Well said, man. And so I was sort of grappling with that. So there's the flamboyant part, and then you're asking about the sex side of it. It's like if you don't leave people with some ability to say, oh, you can be in a lasting relationship. This is why marriage equality was so important. Now, this is a sidebar, but I would never force a church or a mosque or a synagogue to perform a wedding that it was against its beliefs. But from a secular perspective, to whatever respect we remain secular in this country, if you don't give people the same opportunity to be in a relationship and then learn all of the things that
I
we talked
agree,
about
Dave.
before, how you go through that churning with your partner and hopefully make each other better.
I
and
agree.
sometimes make each other worse and all that stuff. What will you leave them with? You will leave them with their carnal desires. And I definitely
You
could have
also
gone
might
down
leave
that
them
road.
with a
And I definitely did go down that road
with
for a
a
part of my life.
defiant rebelliousness.
Yeah, no shit. Hello? It's like they both understand and then don't know how to apply it. They're like, if you don't let people have rights, they're going to rebel. Yes.
Right? Because who knows what happens if you're not allowed, so to speak, to be who you are, then it strikes me as highly probable that
Yeah, no shit.
an excessive amount of rebelliousness is going to start to look attractive, right? And maybe to be indistinguishable from courage. I would say it's got to be the case that the hope, so to speak, of the more enlightened conservative types who were willing to open the door to gay marriage was that by bringing those relationships inside the traditional fold, that things would normalize.
Yeah.
You've given them what? Was it 2017? Those have been 5 years.
Yeah.
And that
6
there would
years.
be a promotion of something like stable, mature, responsible, long-term monogamy.
Well, I think maybe I'm trying to prove that.
Yeah.
I'm not trying
Actually, wasn't it like 2013?
to prove it like I'm setting
Yeah.
out to prove it, but I suppose de facto, because of my life, I'm trying to prove that. I mean, in a weird way, although I'm probably the unlikeliest of conservatives in that sense, it's like, what life am I trying to live? I'm trying to live a life that is somewhat conservative in nature, in that sense, meaning that I believe that family is important and probably the most important thing after the individual. That's how societies are built.
Then why do you advocate for people not wanting families or individuals to have freedom? It doesn't make any sense, Dave. I want people I believe in the freedoms of the individual and the importance of the family, yet I don't want the freedom of the individual or the importance of the family to come into play if you're gay or trans or whatever. Like, so stupid.
Fundamentally believe that.
Thanks for the video, Scott.
So it's weird. It's like my worldview, because otherwise, what are you saying to people? So, okay, you're gay, so you can either just endlessly have sex or endlessly disregard every norm known to man and just have nothing other than wake up and just live life how you want.
2015, so
what other
7 years.
way is there to integrate into society? To really integrate into society? I mean, to me, this is it.
I think that's why.
Do you think maybe we could let a couple generations of people with gay parents get through before we decided whether or not gay marriage was good or bad?
The culture did take the decision that it
The answer is it's good in every sense.
took, which was to open the doors, let's say. Now, we talked about that. I want to get into that too, because
Integration talk is sickening. Oh, yeah. By the way, you can't be yourself. You have to be Dave Rubin. You have to act. You have to straight pass if you want to be in my society, of course.
we have
chats
this
aren't double
notion
posting.
that's
You need to
rife in
refresh.
our culture, let's say, that's insisted upon, that all families are equal. And I understand the emphasis on that from the, let's call it the tolerance perspective. But I think
I want to see what Dave Rubin says when Obergefell is taken down.
that it's badly flawed in one manner. And I think this will be the hardest thing probably for us to discuss, is that
We need to codify all these rights into law as soon
you
as we
can't
possibly
flatten
can.
out distinction.
Which means we need to get rid of the Democratic establishment and what they are right now. We need to vote for only progressives, and we need to stop the Republicans in every chance. By any means necessary. With soup.
Without a tremendous loss. And I don't think it's possible to dispense
kitchens.
with the ideal of heterosexual monogamy. Now, as the ideal.
Yes.
That's, so if we think, well, there's an ideal individual who's responsible and mature and far-seeing and honest.
The ideal individual is a heterosexual monogamist conservative man. Surprise. You know what's the difference between a left-winger and a right-winger when it really comes down to it? I don't think there is an ideal situation in regards to how you should live your life. As long as it makes you happy and you don't tread on anybody else's ability to be happy. You know what I mean? That's it. The platonic gay. Fuck.
An honest trader, a good player, an honorable person, honorable, decent person. And then there's the minimal requirement for a family that's ideal, and that's something approximating heterosexual, long-term heterosexual monogamy. And maybe you have two decent people united together, and then there's a firm platform for children. Now, the problem with that as an ideal is that we all fall short of the ideal. And
How dare you say? I mean, he just sucks. Yeah.
so
Right.
40% of people are going to get divorced. And of the people who don't get divorced, a good percentage of
plants do
them
you have
are
in
in
your
pretty
house?
damn miserable marriages. Now,
Weed?
that doesn't condemn marriage, but it does show how
Have a
difficult
basil plant.
attaining that ideal is. And then there's going to be people who lose their partners and raise children alone, and there are going to be people who raise children alone by happenstance or choice. And it doesn't seem reasonable to, what would you say?
This guy has such a hard time.
Put them outside the bounds of civilized society. Let's say that. By the same token, it doesn't seem reasonable to dispense with the ideal.
Yes.
So maybe we need something like, well, we know what the ideal is.
Do you know what the problem is with Jordan Peterson? All of his conflicts come from him trying desperately to impose hierarchy onto stuff. He gets so confused when it's just like everything's lateral, dude. There is no vertical buildup. It's just horizontal society. Anytime the concept comes up, he quite literally has a hard time conceptualizing it outside of like strict hierarchy. Okay, so we must have an ideal about what makes people the happiest. We must have an ideal. And if you simply say to Jordan, I contend that there is not an ideal way for every single person to live their life. That's it. That's the biggest rub.
It's a divine ideal in some sense, in that none of us can live up to it. But then there has to be a space around that ideal where the individual differences and flaws and peculiarities and idiosyncrasies of people aren't treated so harshly that that becomes counterproductive in and of itself. It's damning with faint praise, but I don't see...
No, that's it. That's it. That's the meat of this more than anything else. That there is, of course, there's an ideal. Of course, there is an ideal.
No. Fundamentally, I disagree. There is not an ideal. We can, as human beings, I think it's more of an assumption, because we know that there is usually, like, of course, there's a way for someone conceptually to maximize their happiness and everything. The problem is that the concept, there is a way to maximize your happiness. That idea can exist. But once you say, and it looks like this, you're wrong. That's the problem. There's no actual distinct hierarchy on how to live your life. There is only your own individual hierarchy and how that matches up with anybody else. And like, your life and how you organize it has a hierarchical set of like, what is your most ideal situation in the way that hierarchies work in Jordan's brain, right? It just works in what's ideal. But I mean, like, these are all gradients, right? Like, you could be professionally happy and personally dissatisfied, or vice versa, but still you could live in what Jordan Peterson would consider an ideal situation. You could be a heterosexual white male with a wife and a nuclear family, picket fence, upper middle class. You both have never done anything wrong ever in your whole life, and nothing's gone wrong, and you could still be dissatisfied because there could be something within you that is incongruent with what Jordan Peterson's idea of an ideal is, right? Like, for instance, I don't want to only eat meat. I love vegetables. I just don't think that me and Jordan Peterson have a tenable understanding of what an ideal is. This is where they fall apart, man.
There has to be an ideal, and if we
there's
believe,
nothing to aim at if there's not an ideal, because if the ideal isn't two people, male.
God damn it! They refunded my fucking Okay, if you're closed at 9. Then be closed at 9. Don't say you're closed at 9:30. Just be closed at 9. That's fine. I'm fine with that. Why would you do this? Now I have to eat dog shit food? Do I have to eat dog shit food instead of like real wholesome food? Never mind. I'm not going to order food. It's done. No food is being ordered from DoorDash. I'm just cooking. I'll make steak fajitas for myself.
And female in a heterosexual relationship, then what is it? Is it 4 people? Is it 8 people? Is it 1 person? Like, instantly you go from that kind of narrow ideal to an intense multiplicity, and we've certainly seen the problems that are associated with that.
Have we? Have we seen the problems associated with that? What associations? Wait, what are some problems associated with that? I don't understand.
And so you can't just blow out the confines of the ideal without destabilizing. Well, maybe you destabilize society at the level of the family. And
no, you only destabilize society if it forces you to be a certain way for society to be stable. Hello? If society is the one that is rigid on this fact, then it's society that must bend, not the people and their desires on how to live their own lives. It's quite clear.
That seems to me
I'm not eating Burger King. It's
a really bad idea.
Well, it's a really bad idea, and I think we're seeing some of the repercussions of that right now, right? I mean, we've seen the excesses of what the woke or the progressives or whatever that is that are now destabilizing everything. This is why I've said this. I've gotten into trouble for saying it a few times.
Why do they think progressives are destabilizing things? What the fuck? All the current modern destabilization that I have ever gone through in my life has been due to right-wing actions. I can't think of a left-wing thing that has actually disrupted my life.
But I'm sympathetic to conservatives who go, boy, you know, we let gay marriage happen, and look what's happened since. Now we're into all this gender stuff, and they're literally teaching gender theory to 5-year-olds who know nothing about gender or sex or anything.
5-year-olds, when they turn into adults, they report that around 4 or 5 years old is when they started having their understandings of gender. So I'm just tossing that out there. Have you talked to an adult that's gone through this? They say 5 years old. Yep.
Anything else. But the issue really is, so if we have the ideal, really what we're talking about here is what do we do with these marginal cases? The marginal cases meaning, so now they're...
The old postmodern question.
Right, so...
What do you do with the post... What do you mean, what do you do with them? I thought you were a libertarian. Hello? You don't do anything with them. You don't have any control over it. That's what you do. You live your own fucking life. These people are our enemies. I am what Jordan Peterson wants me to be, and he is still my enemy.
What do we really do with that? So now, so there are going to be gay couples who want to approximate to that ideal. Mm-hmm. So what does a society do? Does a society try to help them get there? Or does a society just never talk about it, push them to the margins, or
This is literally what you're advocating for when you just say they can't talk about gender stuff. You dumb fuck. This guy is so fucking stupid.
And push it underground.
right.
You're
So
literally
what
advocating
we're trying
for the
to do
bad
right
thing.
here is
They say
unearth
it's
that a little
bad.
bit. So I don't deny
They just
the
said it
importance
was
of a mother.
bad.
By no stretch. As I said, we're going to try to have as many strong female role models as possible. But I don't think it will replicate a mother. By the way, when you talked
Children
about
are pretty good at bonding with adults who aren't their biological relatives. What children don't like is instability in their primary caregiver.
Holy fucking shit. Literally against the thing he said was the ideal is he said, well, actually, evidence disagrees with me entirely and just says as long as there's stability in their primary caregiver or givers, it's fine. Like, hello? He's disagreeing with himself from 5 minutes ago.
They really hate having primary caregivers swap because their primary caregiver is their whole world. And so basically, if you substitute one for another,
Insane.
say,
Meanwhile, he's like, well, if you don't want to get an abortion, or if you want to get an abortion, don't do that. Consider adoption instead, which means that they have to go to a system in which they get rotated through primary caregivers their entire upbringing. Like, hello? Does he ever think when he talks? None of this makes any sense from his point of view. Not my point of view, his fucking point of view.
6 months into the child's
Absolutely
life.
insane. If you are a conservative or a Jordan Peterson fan in my chat right now, explain to me how you got there. Explain.
Then it's as if everything the child knows
Darwin's
has been flipped
CBD
upside down.
treats
So they
are
don't
kicked
like
in, so he is knocked out on the floor, basically.
that. They're perfectly capable of bonding with multiple people, though, and there doesn't seem to be any developmental downside to that. In fact, perhaps quite the contrary. You know, I don't think it's so bad for a child to have a variety of role models to choose from.
Didn't he just say that having more than two parents in the household was a bad thing, and we can see how bad that is? And then he literally goes into this saying the exact opposite from an evidentiary standpoint. Amazing.
And I certainly don't think it's impossible for you to replicate both the masculine and the feminine influences in your children's life. I would just say, well, it's difficult. Might be more difficult even if you're a homosexual couple, but it's difficult if you're. It's difficult enough
it's
if you're
tough.
and there are plenty of heterosexual couples. So where both partners are essentially feminine in their temperament, or both partners are essentially masculine. Now we don't know enough about that to differentiate it right down to the ultimate degree, but the problem that you
It's so interesting too that he's so anti-trans and is already understanding that like people, irrespective of their gender or sex or outward expression, have aspects of what we societally would consider masculine or feminine within them. And as long as the mix of people in his mind is good enough, then it should define a person just fine. Like, none of this holds up against his own. Like, it's not consistent. Jordan Peterson, come talk to me. He won't do it. He should be way smarter than me, right? None of this makes any sense. How do people agree with this fucking guy? Am I taking crazy pills? Am I actually the dumbass here? Nothing about what he is saying holds up against his own opinions on it.
you guys will face isn't of a categorically different type necessarily than the problem that many couples face.
Absolutely. And there are also, when you talk about the ideal and then the way that everyone fits into that ideal or tries to get to that ideal, there are parents who obviously abuse their kids or abuse each other and alcoholics and all of those things. I'm in no way comparing being a gay parent to that, but the point is that there is an ideal situation and then there's what society will allow.
Reality.
And then there's reality. So it's like, okay, so should society stop people who are alcoholics from having kids or stop people who...
Or license parents after intensive training.
Right. Well, that's the road that this really would go down.
Yeah, well,
So,
we've already kind of decided that too, because one of the things the state doesn't do is determine who's a fit parent, right? And we've
Right, we
decided...
love rules.
Well, it's very strange in some sense because it's the most important thing you'll ever do. And yet, while you're not compelled to have an education, for example, around parenting issues before you become a parent, and we've decided everywhere in the world, I would say, maybe without exception, that's one place the government doesn't go. And that's a very interesting decision for everyone to have made. It's quite surprising in some fundamental sense. I guess we know that in that situation in particular, a variety of approaches might be the best. So
It has to
something
be.
like that.
Well, so I guess my question for you as I traverse this is, so if we acknowledge that ideal situation, and again, just using the word ideal, I know that there's a certain set of people that will watch that go and see Rubin saying his relationship or he is less than.
Yeah,
which
well,
is not,
who isn't? And
right. Well,
besides
that's
that,
the
you
key
don't want to
part.
dispense
Yeah.
with the bloody ideal just because it's difficult to attain.
Right. And just because
The ideal is wrong again.
we all are flawed in our own way. I mean, really, I think you said this to me at dinner, but it's like, who amongst us is walking around as the ideal partner, the ideal person, the ideal everything, the ideal father,
The
and
ideal
all of those-
anything, for that matter, yeah.
Virtually nobody is doing that.
Well,
So-
if they are, then the ideal isn't high enough, because an ideal should be something that beckons to you from the distance, right? It's not something that's right there in front of you for you to grip. That's not
Right.
much of an ideal.
well, we'd have a lot more people who are acting that way if it was that easy
Yeah,
to grip,
yeah.
I suppose, right? Like, there's not a lot of people doing it. So I think what I'm trying to figure out here is how does this life, I think, fit into whatever's coming in this new world. You know, we seem to be entering a new world right now. We're watching an old world go away and we're entering this new world. I'm sort of part of this new conservative world, and kind of where does it all fit?
So here's a question that's relevant to that. So it's a good politically incorrect question. And so in some
You're not part of the conservative world, Dave. You're a stooge for it. They're not. Does Dave Rubin think that he will be saved from this?
Mormon Jesus.
What's therapy? Thanks for the read. Dave Rubin will not be saved from this, his own actions. He will lose his marriage. He lives in Florida. When Obergefell v. Hodges gets struck down by the rogue Supreme Court, he will in fact lose the state's recognition of his marriage. Yeah, he's a collaborator. Yeah. Dave Rubin is the enemy of people that would otherwise champion his marriage and his life.
some sense, the more traditional community
He feels as though he is economically above that. I don't think he is.
has opened itself up to the possibility of
He's
including
not
gay
even
marriage
close to last in line.
in the purview
He's
of
middle line.
the acceptable and traditional.
He's
Yeah.
just not
Okay,
first.
so what responsibilities come along for people who are
that's the
homosexual
question.
in relationship to the expansion of that right? What do you think about that? I mean, I know what you've done.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, I think it's a respect for that. It's an acknowledgement that something is good there, and that we have to be tolerant of the questions. I guess that's it. We have to. When I see this now, suddenly, like, you know, when we announced that we were having kids, there was some pushback online from more religious people on the right. By the way, 99% of it was all anonymous people. It was virtually nobody. Certainly nobody that I knew. There were one or two people that had blue checks on Twitter.
You can join the official Discord on the Fritz. You can join the official Discord. Boop. It's right here. Hi, Jinja, Umadine. And on the Fritz, you did it! And you can do so in fan art, which we get from time to time.
But it was all these people, you know, talking about
You too
the sanctity
can
of marriage
join the
and
official
all of
Porn
these
Discord.
things. But I'm willing to have that conversation. I accept that this,
that's
this
what
is
we're doing.
Yeah, I genuinely accept that this is a little bit weird. This is a little bit, you know. But it's like, if we don't have these conversations, then the thing that we're pulling apart marriage and the family, just by saying it is anything and everything at the exact same time.
Yeah, right. Well, that
is far more dangerous.
You bet.
That's
Yeah,
far
yeah.
more dangerous. So that's why, even as I'm sitting here now, I'm sort of like, I partly don't want to have this conversation, because
Yeah.
it's like, I don't know the answers to all of these things, but I know that we have to be able to do it.
You're supposed to talk when you don't know the answers, because then maybe you can think it through and you can exchange views with other people, and you can expand your knowledge in that domain of ignorance. I want to go back to something you said. The two of you decided that genetic similarity was an important was an important factor to take into account.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, that issue doesn't arise in the case of fertile heterosexual couples. It does if they have to adopt or
Yeah.
if they decide to adopt instead. And we know that there is a preference, quite a marked preference, although this might not be so clear with adoption. If you have a step parent and you're a child who's not biologically related to the step parent, you're at way higher risk for abuse, like way, way higher. I don't remember how many fold higher, but it's a tremendous amount. I think it's the single most predictive risk factor. I suppose that would probably scrap with alcohol use. But so people are more positively inclined to their genetic relatives. Now, the exact details of that aren't clear.
Again, he doesn't think that has any socioeconomic ties whatsoever. Because he thinks that every single family that's remarried is just like... And he doesn't think that a lot of those are just heterosexual men, by the way, that are the problem there. You know?
And it's not surprising.
Because again, he's doing this he's trying to say that this is how like gay parents would be like. Oh, maybe gay parents would be more likely to abuse their children when there's no evidence of that. In fact, I would argue, I bet without looking that because of the hurdles that gay parents have to go through to be parents, I bet they have much higher success rates when it comes to rearing children, insofar as like the child's happiness and well-being. And
if you think like a biologist that would be the case.
Great.
But this had to be a conscious decision on your part, and it wasn't a decision that you guys necessarily had to take. So why did you decide that that was important?
Yeah, man, it's one of those things. Well, you know, I had heard you talk about this part of growing of parenting and seeing yourself in this child, and
you see your relatives too.
You see everything, I suppose. I think I don't know that I have a good answer for this actually.
But you both decided that
we knew it. We knew it. We knew it when we decided we didn't want to adopt it. We just knew. I don't even know how to describe it.
Yeah.
There was something important when we had that conversation. Okay, are we going to adopt? And we really did think about it. And it would have been way easier. It would have been way less expensive and all of those things.
Yeah, it's
and
a strange thing that can't be articulated.
I don't know. I don't know that I can articulate it
Well, you might
properly.
ask yourself on the similar front is like, well, there's lots of unwanted babies in the world. And so why isn't the ethical thing when you're a heterosexual couple just to adopt an unwanted baby? Why bring another baby into the world when there's a baby that could use a home? And the answer is, that isn't what people do. And then the question might be, well, what?
Okay, then why advocate for a system that would make adoption a difficult process for everyone involved, and you wouldn't advocate for a situation where someone maybe could prevent that from happening?
Why? And you can come up with a biological rationale, but that doesn't mean that there's a conceptual answer handy. Like, why do you want your own kids? And the answer to that is something like, well, that's what everyone has always done since the beginning of time. It's something like that, right?
But it's not really an answer.
No.
Right?
Well, it's not a well-articulated. This is partly why conservatives are set back on their heels so frequently when they're questioned by radicals, because radicals will do something like, well, justify marriage. And the conservative thinks, well, we all agreed about that like 50,000 years ago. And so I don't...
Wait. Okay, I don't... Jordan Peterson appeals to the time things have existed for a lot. There is no viability in an old idea because it's old, okay? Sure did, Sky. I mean, I think if marriage is an institution, and marriage is an institution that is governed by the state, you know what I mean? It has semi-religious origins, but not always. It's mostly a property transaction. Is like the reason that you give a ring to a woman when you buy her from her husband is that so if you die, she has a valuable that she can sell to survive. And other jewelry gifts are the similar things. They're not allowed to have wealth, but they can have things worth wealth. Anyway, so that's a holdover from an old sort of like biblical era on marriage. But marriage is beneficial because of the state and how it regards marriage and the tax breaks it gives people and the benefits it gives people, especially in regards to their property and children. And so, like, it's just so silly to say that, like, oh, a radical might say justify marriage. But yeah, justify marriage. Justify, like, the state's version of marriage. You know what I mean? Like, there's an incentive package structured into our very system about marriage. It's about that. It's quite literally about that. If you like, that's what a radical is asking. A radical is not asking why should two people pair bond for a period of time. It's like sometimes people love each other and then they get to. So, like, it's totally different. That's not what a radical is not saying the concept of marriage at all. A radical, a leftist is saying, you know, the state, how it interacts with that.
Don't actually have a fully fleshed out, explicit rationale and defense for the institution of marriage. I thought that was self-evident. And
I can understand why you would think it was self-evident, because you think that you are the ideal. You know what I mean? Like, he never comes from the position of, okay, what if I'm not somebody else's ideal? Again, you could stand to have a discussion with me, Jordan.
I would say the preference for your own biological children
maybe I'd be
has
better.
that self-evidence about it. There is a cruelty about that in some real sense, right? But I suppose that's the cruelty of...
Bouvine, this is not a joke. I can make double the amount of money I do make and stay in the same tax bracket if I'm married. I am incentivized to marry and do think I might. I do think I might marry her. We put a ring on it. I guess we should follow through.
Specifically loving some people more than you're capable of loving everyone else.
So maybe we just have to accept that some things are self-evident rather than endlessly wonder why they're self-evident,
well, that's what
right?
a conservative would say.
Well, then I suppose I became...
Yeah.
You know what, though? We've talked about this. I'm not at all interested in the government contract and the license involved with it. I am... The only thing I think of when I think of marrying Sarah is that I'm probably going to cry at this point in my life. If it was in my 20s, I wouldn't have cried. But now I think I'm definitely going to cry. And then I think of a bunch of other things as far as, like, any sort of things I would want to do during the wedding. But, like, mostly what I think about is the celebration with our friends and family. It's not the ceremony. It's, like, after. It's always after the ceremony of it in my head. Like, 95% of the time I think about marriage, I think about the party with our friends and just celebrating that. Like, hey, we love each other, and you guys know that already, but let's fucking make it official. You know what I mean? I think that's cute. I like that a lot. The dancing and the drinking and the maybe the weed and the food and the whole thing, just the vibe of that whole thing. That's what I think about. I think that's what most people think about when they think of getting married, isn't it?
Most unlikely conservative of all, that it in some ways it doesn't really matter, but I know that it is. I know that it was when we sat there and had that conversation.
When push came to shove.
When push came to shove, we said, no, we want to have, if we're having two kids, let's have one from each of us biologically.
Some of it is, look, I really love Tammy.
Yeah.
And it's quite something to see her echoed in the kids.
Yeah.
You know, my son, it's turned out that Michaela perhaps looks more like me and Julian looks more like Tammy. But I can see Tammy in him, and I'm pretty happy about that, you know.
Yeah.
And I suspect, hopefully, she feels the same way on the other side. So,
not gonna lie, I want to spend Monday girl moding and trying out how I feel, but I'm terrified I'll be assaulted or harassed. How do I quench those feelings? I mean, I don't know where you live, but do you feel like you live in a community that would harass you, or a household that would harass you? My suggestion would be to go to a place where you are 100% comfortable to be your authentic self and then girl mode. In Michigan, just in general, I don't think people in Michigan really do that I've never seen... I'm going to be honest. I'm sure trans people experience it. But I mean, like, Hannah's a good friend of mine. We've been out in public. And I've been around trans people my whole life. I mean, there was a trans woman... as an employee at our McDonald's when I was like a kid. So, and I never saw, like, mobs of people or anyone like really outwardly being like fuck you here. Lenawi County? Lenawi, not Leelanau? Lenawi? What the fuck? I've never heard of that in my life. Where the fuck is that? Is that up north? No, it's it's down south. Oh, it's at the border. That's why. I don't know. I mean, I don't spend a lot of time there. I'm more mid to North Michigan. Lenawee? Yeah, it didn't used to be. You know how Michigan things are. Oh, that was native or French? I guess we're just going to make it sound as fucking... I was going to say a banned word for a food. We're going to make it sound as white as possible.
That love for the person is also echoed in their replication in the children. And then there's more than that, too, because like when my son was really little...
I'd say, honestly, the safest places that you could express yourself would be with friends and family. And then if you want to, take people with you when you do so if you don't know about your community, just so you have numbers or whatever. But, I mean, where I live, I don't know that it comes up a ton. I've never seen it. I definitely think you get side-eyed. But, yeah, I don't know. Then I wouldn't do it anywhere where your family members... If you don't feel safe with your family, I wouldn't do it where people that interact with your family would see, you know what I mean? Yeah, normal people usually just are fucking chill. So I would just go somewhere, if you want to just drive somewhere where you're comfortable with a friend or something, yeah, I think that'd be where you go. Grand Rapids would be a nice place to do it. Grand Rapids is quite progressive. Traverse City, another place. Ann Arbor, yeah.
He really, like an infant, just a newborn infant, he would have facial expressions that I could see were my dad. It's like, oh man, he looks exactly like dad. He has exactly the same facial expression. And so that echoing of other people that you love, that's not nothing, you know? And that doesn't mean that if you adopt a child, you can't come to love that child as if they're your own. Clearly, that's possible. But
Grand
that
Rapids
doesn't mean
is
it's
excellent
optimal,
place.
and it doesn't mean it's easy and without pitfalls. And I think the data on step parents makes that really
Hell wasn't Hell purchased for a moment by a gay like influencer?
clear. It's just part of the reason we talked about this a little bit too. Part of the reason that heterosexual
'Cause I don't think most
monogamy
people give a
is
shit.
the ideal is because it's also got. You can't beat it in terms of efficient, right? You said how difficult it was to produce a child.
Yeah.
It's
Gives a fuck if it's efficient.
not that difficult at all if you're two heated up 15-year-olds in the back of your father's car
It's
and you're
pretty much
alone,
gonna
right?
work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It's it's as easy as falling off the bed. Too easy in some sense, perhaps. But that also indicates that ease and efficiency also is a solid reason why a certain kind of ideal exists. You guys had to jump through hoops, and not everyone could.
But that's a systemic problem. That's not... God, it's not jumping through hoops. I've had sex way more times than I've fallen off the bed, George. Yeah, I don't... Have I ever fallen off the bed? Maybe once or twice. And not in my adult life. I feel like I've fallen once at least.
could do that. They don't have the resources. And so that's another obstacle.
It's a lot. And again, without that map, without that, that's the interesting thing for me. It's like, as I've sort of shifted politically, as you know about, and so much of my life has been about politics and talking about what I think for a living. And then suddenly, man, all of my political thoughts, all of
4
the
minutes
stuff
until the
that
ad.
I
I can't
talk about
snooze
all the
anymore.
time,
I've tried.
government, all these things. Now it's really like, it's all sitting right in front of me right now. The difference between your own personal morality and the way government is and our role in all of these things. It's like it's this, the self-evident part of this. I'm trying to do what I know is right.
Right.
Trying to do what I know
and that's
is right.
not always explicitly explainable.
And maybe right isn't the word. I'm trying to do what I know.
No,
I'm
I
trying
think
to do
right
what
is
I'm trying to do what I know I'm supposed to do. How about that?
Yeah, well, that would be good. To try to figure out what that is and to walk that path. That's a good thing if you could manage it. Another thing we talked about a little bit decided to discuss today in relationship to the ideal was, this is also an extremely contentious issue in case we haven't covered enough contentious issues already. And this goes back to the issue of the conservatives who took issue with gay marriage. It's like, okay, we're starting to break down the categorical boundaries here. Where's that going to go? Well, we've seen where it goes, at least to some degree.
And as I said, I'm sympathetic to this. I really am sympathetic to this argument. I see it. I see what they were worried about. And unfortunately, the left, you tweeted out something a couple of weeks ago. I was never a conservative until the liberals decided there were no rules. I'm paraphrasing you roughly.
No rules? What rules? People just want to live how they are. That's it. That's the fucking rule. That's the what rules do I want to break down that you don't want me to break down? And I'll tell you why it's antithetical to freedom.
But I'm sympathetic to that. So much of all of the things that we knew, we no longer know at a societal level, apparently, and that's because
like the
of
distinction between a man and a woman. Well,
because you were wrong. It's not that we don't know; it's that you have the wrong answer. You were wrong. It is what it is. That's all. You thought you were right. You weren't. Oh well, happens.
We could talk about that in relationship.
Happens.
Again, to use this hated phrase, to
Dave
the LGBT.
is both grifting and stupid. The worst possible universe.
T plus community.
Yeah.
First of all, the notion that that's an integral community is foolish,
Horrific
especially
idea.
as you add more and more letters.
I have no innate knowledge of what it is, more innate knowledge of what it is to be trans than you do. I am male, I am a cisgendered male, I am a man born in a man's body, I happen to be attracted to men. You are a man born in a man's body, you happen to be attracted to women. I have no more in common with a trans person than
Except
you
the
do.
fact of marginalization, the
Right.
arguable fact
But
of
that
marginalization.
is not a unifying force. That is not something to put on a flag and say, now we are all together because of this thing.
The question is, can you see, that's the theory in some sense, is that the marginalized have more in common than that what differentiates them. And I
don't buy that.
Well, there's a quasi-ethnocentrism and even a racism that's associated with that, right? The different are categorically different, and they're all
And better.
different in the
Don't-
same way. Well,
Yeah.
that's the next step.
Yeah.
But the rubber's really hit the road in a terrible way recently, because you tell me what you think about this. I followed Ken Zucker's work on trans kids. Now, Zucker worked at a place called CAMH in Toronto, major mental health institution, and he was a mainline scientific researcher, not a political type at all, really a dedicated clinician and researcher, and he ran a gender dysphoria treatment clinic, probably the clinic, and he was the editor of the main journals where research on that sort of topic was published. And what Zucker, his treatment program for kids with gender dysphoria was quite straightforward. He observed, as a consequence of his careful research, that about 85% of kids who manifest extreme gender dysphoria, so the sense of discomfort in their own body and a desire to be the opposite sex, 80 to 85% of them would desist on their own by the age of 18 or 19.
So he was born in 1950. Let's see. 30 years. Let me see. Kenneth Zucker. Why have I heard this name before? So he's from 1950. Has he been doing this forever? Boys? I don't know. He's a American Canadian, University of Toronto. Weird. Zucker's views and therapeutic approach have attracted criticism from several advocates for mental health professionals, citing a review by 2 adolescent psychiatrists. Wow, I am blown out again. What the fuck? That shouldn't be happening with this camera. Let me make it down to here, though. Although I guess it is dark in here. Let's see. Life therapeutic intervention for gender variance. Since the mid-70s, Zucker has treated about 500 pre-adolescent gender variant children to have them accept the gender identity they were assigned at birth till they are at an age he believes that they may determine their own gender identity. What? He treated them to accept their initial gender identity for... He's telling them... Okay, so it sounds like... Zucker says he tries to encourage children to accept their birth sex and supports them in transitioning should they still experience gender dysphoria into adolescence. He's surprised to find that 85% of children until they are adults agree with him. Wow. Okay. We got to it. Sounds not good.
And so his hypothesis was, leave them the hell alone, because you do the least harm that way. And most of them will settle into their bodies as they mature, knowing that puberty in particular, especially for kids, you could imagine a male who has a more feminine temperament and who's also perhaps higher in openness, so has a more mutable identity, more creative, is going to be, and is going to be, especially if high in neuroticism as well, is going to be uncomfortable around puberty. Mm-hmm. Everyone's uncomfortable around puberty. We should make that straight. Yeah. And so you just leave the kids alone. But what he also showed, and this is the killer fact as far as I'm concerned, is that a very large proportion of kids with gender dysphoria grow up and are homosexual.
Yes.
And so what that certainly means, is that the vast majority, and it might be as high as 80% of the kids who are being convinced now that they inhabit the wrong bodies and are being surgically mutilated in a permanent and terrible manner.
Not when they're kids. What the fuck? Who's performing like gender affirming surgery on children? Is that happening? Why do they always say this? It happens when they decide to as adults. Or teenagers, like...
The overwhelming majority of them are gay.
Well, think how twisted this is. Just so I know you know this, but so think about it this way. So as I said
only
before,
Democrat-run cities.
People.
Of course, it'd be risky to do all developing. I think everybody agrees that. I think what trans people, tell me if I'm wrong, transes in chat. The desire from the trans community that I see communicated to me in regards to their transition as children is this. They simply do not want to be forced to be called any certain thing. And also, they want to make sure they don't go through the wrong puberty. It's not about, like, getting their genitals changed at an early age. It is about not going through the wrong puberty. Do I have it? It seems like yes. I want to identify correctly, and I don't want to, like, if I feel like a girl, I don't want to go through, body hair and shit like what I went through. Right, that seems easy. Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. All right, that's the whole thing. That's what everybody advocates for. That seems fine. I don't want to go through the wrong puberty, okay, and it's a thing that I can go through later if I so choose to. That's 100% fine.
Always say to me, I'm more straight acting. I seem to be more, you wouldn't just meet me on the street and automatically go, okay, this guy is gay, right?
Yeah, puberty blockers.
So when I was 5 or 7, when I was growing up, or 10 years old, I was playing with G.I. Joe and Transformers, and I liked war and battle and all of those boy thought of things. Now, there are plenty of...
But you're a boy. What? Okay, cool. What the fuck? I don't understand why they are associating gender with toys. It is so weird. I like to play with Barbies because they had tits.
Gay kids that are growing up that like Barbie, or they like, dressing up, or whatever that might be. in today's world, the teacher at the school or the administrator or the gender expert or whatever would probably be coaching them towards saying that they were trans, where they would have left someone like me alone. There would be nothing to think about. So in an odd sense, the trans movement is extremely anti-gay. That's something that these people really have to grapple with.
Hello? Most trans people I know are gay. What? I'd say the vast majority of trans people that I know would call themselves gay. Or bi, or, you know, just not straight. Okay. I don't know why he feels attacked by trans people. Is it because it's not his turn now to be focused on? I got like an eyelash or something.
There are gay people who are very effeminate, but they still happen to be men. I mean,
that's fine. That exists. That's okay. No one's saying that's wrong.
There is, by the way, a growing movement in, again, that gay community phrase of gay people who really are pushing back on this. They're really realizing
well, it's
how
the
rabid,
worst part. It is the worst possible outcome in some sense.
Well, because it's also
coalition.
because it's making gay people all seem like extremists. It goes.
What? Okay, as a guy who's not a member of the gay community, although you seem to embrace me at some point, as an outsider looking in, I never once considered that a trans person, like, I didn't think that they would have any bearing on the value of gay people. Again, a lot of trans people are gay. Like, I don't know, man.
Goes back to what we started with. So when Stonewall happened and the fight for equality is just. The fight for equality is always just, so black people can vote, so women can vote, in my estimation, so that gay people can get married. The fight for equality is good, and it's a true liberal thing to fight for. Once you go from that, the activists still needed more. And what did they turn?
What do you mean needed more? Trans people didn't have equal rights. What do you mean needed more? If trans people didn't exist, I wouldn't advocate for them. But they do. So I do. What do you mean they needed more? Yeah. Yes, we stopped at the wrong point. We need to continue to move forward. Yep. Trans people deserve rights. That's pretty reasonable.
They turned that to the kids. The average person who was protesting at Stonewall, if you would have said to them, you know, the average person that was 35 years old that was at a bar at Stonewall, I want to be able to go to a bar that has windows maybe that aren't blocked out, that isn't underground, and all of these things, and be in a relationship that I don't have to hide or whatever. Actually, 30 years from now, 40 years from now, this is going to be about sending your kid to school where they're going to privately discuss sex with teachers.
Gay rights did not, in fact, lead to children having private sex conversations with teachers. That's not a thing that happened or is happening. Does he mean comprehensive sex education, which is like a forum, not private and held openly, and parents can... Did you know parents can, like, attend some of that shit? Like, and you can sign off on it, and you can withhold your child from those things? Did you know that? Like, no one's forcing this on any kids. They give, like, they give permission slips out for these things. And if you want to sit in on it, as a teacher, I'd be happy to have someone sit in on my sex ed class, because I think the parents could use it too.
They would
As a
never
prodrome
believe
to
it.
hormonal transformation and surgery. Right. And
I don't think anyone's... That's not what's... What? So now we're talking about gender, not sex anymore. So you have a sex conversation with your teacher, and then now all of a sudden you're on the hormones and getting surgery. It used to be that, oh, well, we don't have to give trans people rights because there's not a lot of them. And now it's everyone's trans. I'm just going to throw it out there. I don't think a lot of people are trans. I think there's some trans people. I don't think a lot of people are trans. I mean, it's a lot of people in that they deserve rights. It's not a lot of people in the, like, pie of humanity. I think like half are gay, though, or LGBT. You know, half of people are not cis and heterosexual. That's what I'll say. I'll say it's close to 50%. It's got to be. It might be even more.
And more than that, and here's another perverse element of this. So many legislatures
All
around
kids
the
are
world
being
now
trans.
have banned so-called conversion therapy. And to me, this has been a catastrophe. Now, I know that there was a small...
He thinks it's a catastrophe to ban conversion therapy? This motherfucker is the least freedom-based individual. He thinks it's a catastrophe that they banned conversion therapy. Incredible.
percentage,
That's so mask off.
of fundamentalist Christian therapist types in the U.S. who were offering their services to homosexual people who were unhappy with their sexual orientation. And so you could have a discussion about whether that's ever appropriate or not, although I would say that's bloody well between the person and their therapist as far as I'm concerned. But now that's illegal, and it's illegal to the point where...
That's because that wasn't how... Wait, you can go get therapy right now if you're unhappy with your sexuality, and you can still talk to a priest. In fact, you could quite literally consent to people shocking you and doing all the other stuff. You could consent to conversion therapy right now. It's weird no one does. What it was keeping people from being forced to do so. Discord and Vol, thanks for the 100 bits and rage.
You are required by the conditions of your psychological association, your professional associations, American Psychological Association, let's say.
Wait, these people aren't therapists. What are you talking about? These people are not licensed therapists. They were fucking priests.
To affirm the stated identity of your client, which is completely insane.
And also very different. Affirming the stated identity of the client is very different than affirming that someone happens to be attracted to the same sex, right? Those are very different things than affirming the gender identity.
You're not, as a therapist, your role isn't to affirm or to deny. It's to listen, right, and to explore. That's your purpose.
In all your years of clinical therapy and all the patients that you ever saw, I'm sure you saw dozens, if not hundreds, of gay patients. Did you ever meet a gay man who successfully de-gayed and then went on to live a completely functioning life?
This is a good question. And I think Jordan Peterson is going to lie and say, yes, he knows someone who's ex-gay and is happy.
No.
Oh, good. Fuck. Sweet.
I did have,
no, of course not.
Have a client who was questioning, who went the heterosexual route.
Yeah.
He was questioning under some duress because he was the target of somewhat unwanted amorous affections by a fairly persistent gay gentleman who, and this person was...
A straight guy got hit on by a gay guy, and it put him into so much distress that he asked his therapist in a crisis about his straightness. And he chose the heterosexual path, huh? Have you talked to that guy recently? Do you think he's still straight? Gamer G, thanks, Paul.
I would say easily swayed and confused, but that was the closest I'd ever seen to the situation that you're describing.
Nonetheless, if someone, the correct answer to that is, hey, whatever are you genuinely sexually attracted to a man, or do you just like attention from somebody validating you? If you like it, then it's gay, and if you just like validation, then you just like validation, and that's normal. So that's it. If you're usually swayed, maybe you're bi, maybe you're
Now,
pan.
this conversion therapy issue is so now you, as a therapist, you're ethically and legally bound not to question the identity of the stated identity of your client, which to me is preposterous because all you ever do as a therapist is question identity. That's the whole bloody, enterprise. And you don't do it affirming or denying. You really don't. You do it as a questioner and a strategist.
For sure,
but then we
aren't easily swayed to be gay. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think any of you have a dick so pretty I want to suck it. You know what I'm saying? I just don't think it's there. I don't think you could have like a big masculine like fucking hog. I just don't think it's for me. Yeah. I don't think you could be a lumberjack and make me sexually attracted to you. You could be a lumberjane, though.
Have the other conversion therapy, which is surgical conversion, and that's not only legal, but opposing it has become a crime. And so that's a form of...
What?
Before I eat this, I wanted to show you how proud I am of this toast on this grill.
I should test it.
No. Mine. But isn't it pretty?
Can I have a fry?
Yeah.
Fuck yeah. She won't give me a grillch, but she'll give me a fry. Oh, got a twofer on accident. Haha, bonus.
insanity that I just I can just barely wrap my head.
I didn't realize Sarah went fancy with it and put truffle salt on this shit. Damn. Lap of luxury, guys.
Around.
So what do we do going back to the conservatives that were worried that this is where we were going to end up? In some sense, I should probably be their greatest hero because it's like, oh, here's someone who wanted to enter civilized society.
Dave Rubin, desperate not to end up in one of the conversion camps.
Wanted to affirm most of the long-fought, time-tested ideals, wanted to enter the world with those things, help defend that world. It happens to be a little different than we would think, right?
Yeah.
Okay, it's two guys. I can't deny it. I should sort of be a hero to them. It's not the ideal one that they went for, but it's approximately close enough that this...
He really, really, really wants straight people to love him.
This should be pretty good. I suppose that will be my challenge in life. Maybe that's...
Pick me.
I also think that's probably true. My suspicions are that when we release this discussion, that the overwhelming majority of people will be sympathetic to your situation and unwilling to render harsh judgment. And maybe that does exclude, and we should get to this too, some of the more fundamentalist religious types. But you also said earlier that as far
give me a fucking wiggly hand shot. Nice.
as you're concerned, they also have a point.
There is a point there.
Okay, so what's the point?
Well, there has to be a point there because, look, gay marriage was legalized, I think, at a federal level in the United States in 2015, if I'm not mistaken. So that we're now 7 years off of that.
Right.
And look at all of the craziness that has happened since. I am not directly connecting it to that. But
I am. What a fucking loser, dude.
when you change fundamental structures, some weird things are going to happen. This is, again, where I would lay most of the blame here. I would lay on the sort of liberal establishment where nobody was willing to defend anything. And it's why the progressives basically were able to destroy everything.
The problem maybe comes is so we...
Baldur's Gate stream will happen. I was just going to go straight into it. I'm going to have to cook first, so I'm going to turn off the stream, turn the stream back on a little bit after I've cooked and eaten dinner, and then we'll do Baldur's
We had
Gate.
this implicit ideal, which we've already discussed, which is heterosexual.
Sarah also is at a Final Fantasy wedding
monogamy,
right now, or
long-term,
was or will
faithful, all of that, goodwill, that impossible ideal that people strive towards. And there's a real boundary there, right? Like a real boundary. It's a man and a woman.
Thanks, Colin.
It's one man and one woman. They're bound together over the course of their life. The community supports that. Like, it's a pretty definable box.
Yeah, and people are saying that box is shit.
And then you say, well, we'll let the walls down. And so we include single mothers and we include gay couples. And it's like, yeah, but the wall's gone now. So what else do you include? And the answer is, well, we don't know. And that's actually not a very good answer.
Right.
Because what happens is anyone who knocks can now come in. And you think, well, that's great because we're being tolerant. But the problem is, well, what happens when all the people in the room who are now invited in actually do not agree at all? And so
that any of this was ever good in the first place.
Marriage? There's not a lot of marriage abolitionists in these groups of people. There's some that thinks that the state shouldn't have any interaction with that, but that's something that Dave should be sympathetic to as a self-described libertarian, no? Like, hello? Most people are just like, we just want to get married and live lives and be who we are. That's it.
That's
well,
sort
that
of that's sort
and
of
also
where we're
what
at.
should be done, because you can
argument.
imagine now if you're dealing with a
Dave Rubin, Jordan Peterson, have the courage to talk to somebody that disagrees with you every once in a while. In this setting, in the exact same setting that they have, where it's just a conversation. It isn't a fucking moderated debate. It isn't some 2 PhD thing. We don't do sell tickets to it. Just have the fucking conversation.
10-year-old boy who's or 11-year-old boy, let's say, a little closer to puberty, who's ambivalent about his sexual attraction and his sexual identity, but also has a more feminine temperament, which is not rare, by the way, because there's a lot of overlap between masculine and feminine temperaments. And now you have to decide, well, is this boy likely to be gay or is he trans?
No, you don't. Why do you... What the perspective is not what you have to apply to the child. It is just, what does the child tell me they feel like? That's it. It's only about what that person feels. You don't have to apply anything to it. There's no energy that you, Jordan, has to spend on this topic in regards to somebody else. You don't have to. They get to decide that. And if they have questions, you're more than welcome to answer. If they go, "Hey, Daddy," and you're like, "Yes, child, hey, I like wearing dresses. Does that make me a girl?" No, it makes you a person that likes to wear dresses. Do you feel like a girl? I don't know, sometimes. What's a girl feel like? I don't know what a girl feels like. Maybe I feel like that sometimes. Well, fucking figure it out, dude. Have a good time. Enjoy your dress. Like, I don't know. Like, what? How does that conversation have to go any different than that? Like, hey, do you got any questions? Yeah, I got a pee-pee. And I like dolls. Okay, me too, man. Anything else? Like, it's not. These aren't hard conversations. Like, what do you got going on? What do you got going on in your life? How do you like stuff? Sure, whatever. Now, if you walk up to me and you're like, "Daddy," and I go, "Yeah," you go, "I like to kill birds," and I'd be like, "Nah, we can't be doing that." And then, then we have conversation. Now, if you just like think you like a boy or something, I don't care.
And that's a hell of a decision to have to make, especially when you can't actually have a real discussion about it. You can't include the parents.
The parents can't, and the clinician isn't allowed to say
ask
what they think
even.
or ask, in essence, yeah.
And then especially when it's accompanied by the pressure, which is a complete bloody lie, that, well, if you don't let this kid transition right now, all you're going to...
What do you mean transition right now? What does that mean to him?
...do is cause him more damage. You're going to increase the risk of suicide, which, by the way, I think is a claim that there is absolutely zero evidence for.
That's not true. It's pretty clear what the evidence is. I mean, you could look at... We don't have to look it up here. You can look up any sort of statistics in regards to suicide rates among LGBT youth and especially trans people, and always, the cause of these things, as denoted by the statistics, is lack of social acceptance. Lack of social acceptance. It is not, in fact, physical, like, incongruence that is the primary drive here in regards to people's dissatisfaction when it comes to their transness and how, their existence within that. It always primarily is social inacceptance. So that puts the onus on us as a culture. And then secondarily, or maybe even third, because I would say secondarily, it's probably self-acceptance, or that's maybe number one of those two things. Probably depends case to case, based on how much, like, how maybe they have come from a religious home and they have a lot of, like, internal turmoil about, like, am I a sinner? Stuff like that, which I'm sure some of you have gone through. But definitely in the top three is eventually their physical, like, body and how that corresponds to how they feel. Absolutely. But I think, like, no one's rushing into that for children. I don't know why this is a myth. I mean, I know why, like, anti-trans people would use it as a myth, because it's they get to wrap up the their base and make them rabid and anti-trans for no reason. But Jordan Peterson is just a dumbass.
Zero evidence for
Useful
it. We just
stooge.
don't have, even as the American Psychological Association admitted.
This is wrong, by the way.
We have no
He's
good
wrong.
long-term follow-up data on the mental health of people who've transitioned over a reasonable period of time.
two reasons that would be true, although we do have some currently running and pretty robust past studies on this that all say that transitioning is a good thing. Well, first of all, this topic in the United States has basically just come up in the broader consciousness, right? This is the first time as a nation we're discussing this problem, right? And I say the problem, I mean their pushback against it, not like trans people existing, of course. So that leads to a misunderstanding of what the reality is for these people because you've never pointed the spotlight on them with any sort of humanity before. But if you do, would you look at that? They're humans.
It just doesn't exist for obvious reasons. It's only just started to happen.
Right. So probably in 10 years, we'll have some
maybe
beginnings of evidence of it. And I have a feeling...
assuming that we're in a situation where such evidence could be collected and discussed.
What do you mean? Ask trans people when they're happy. Hey, trans people, were you happier before you came out or like, hey, any trans person here, do you feel more or less satisfied with your life post being out? And hopefully, if you want to, taking HRT, transitioning socially, transitioning medically, whatever that means for you, more or less since you're more satisfied, even if you get a larger amount of pushback from people. You know what I mean? More satisfied. What does being out mean? I mean out to people you feel safe being out to. That's what it means. Life says more. I mean, clearly you're more satisfied. I would be very shocked to find out you're less satisfied. You're probably less satisfied with people's reactions, but more satisfied with yourself and who you are, right? Because the point is that you are who you are and you want to express that. Of course you'd be more satisfied with that because you're not holding back. You know what I mean?
Approaching a rational and truly empirical fashion.
Well, as you know, Dr. Deborah So, who's a sex researcher, I mean, she was bringing up a lot of these issues and basically just pushed out of the field altogether.
Well, and increasingly the scientific journals won't publish that sort of study. And look, they cut Zucker off at the knees, man. They threw him out of CAMH. He was the world's preeminent researcher in the field of gender dysphoria. And he, like I said, he wasn't a political guy, which is partly why they could go after him so easily. So he sued the Toronto Star. He sued the University of Toronto newspaper, and he sued CAMH. He won all three lawsuits. So
but then he has to spend most of his life suing places of journalism instead of doing the work that he wants to do. And he was seriously canceled,
right? And that's
canceled. Found to be unfit for his occupation is not canceled.
Devastating for someone. I would say it's equivalent. Being canceled in a serious sense is roughly equivalent to having a near fatal illness. Right. It is no bloody joke. And so I don't know if we'll ever be able to gather the information we need to gather about such things.
So it seems to me what we're talking about here is, with that ideal, then what are the levers that we have for sort of judicious gatekeeping so that the single mother who really is doing her best will be welcomed into society, or that the gay couple who wants to be part of what the ideal is will be welcomed in? I don't know what all the firewalls are on that. I think that's partly what the problem is, right?
Firewalls. Why are we trying to limit people's liberties, libertarian Dave Rubin?
Right? We don't have firewalls. Liberals put tolerance above everything in their hierarchy. Tolerance is the most important thing.
That's not true. I do not tolerate Nazis. What are you talking about? No. Freedom. And again, hierarchy. The problem is inherent in your framing. There is not this is it. We don't want an unjust hierarchy.
Okay.
That's what it is. There's no hierarchy of tolerance. It simply is. Are you harming other people? Yes or no? There's no hierarchy to it. It's a horizontal thing. Everyone should have exactly the same amount of rights that I do. As a cis-het man, white man, property-owning cis-het white man, who will have a wife. You should have the same amount of rights as me. And frankly, I should have more rights than I already do. I should have more freedoms. And so should all of you. There's no hierarchy to it. This is incorrect.
Hey, we've tolerated everything. Now everyone's in the house.
We don't tolerate everyone, clearly.
Tolerance and carelessness is a very difficult one to establish.
I think it's careless to allow Nazis into our government.
And if you are careless, especially in your conceptualization and perhaps in your actions. The best mask for that carelessness is to proclaim yourself to be tolerant. Oh, everything goes. It's like, well, that's because you have zero discipline and no ordered conceptualization of the world whatsoever.
I fundamentally disagree with Jordan Peterson here as far as the ordered conceptualization of the world and stuff like that. I think that an actual ordered conceptualization of the world would understand that each person individually has a subjective understanding of their own happiness and what that means for them. It's not an objective standard that we live by. Your happiness is not my happiness, is not someone else's happiness. That's the understanding that these people don't get. They think if you live like me, you will be happy because I'm happy. And it's like, that's just not the fucking case, bro.
Because of your lack of discipline. Now,
Not a lack of discipline. You could be disciplined or undisciplined. There are people who are highly disciplined who are trans advocates.
going to pass it all off as a moral virtue. And, well, we're definitely seeing the consequences of that, especially in the trans issue.
I mean, it's completely burst forth. So that's why when people say the LGBTQI, I don't even know what, I'm not exactly sure what the Q
alphabet
is. I have no
joke
idea
again.
What the I is. As I said, the T's, as our friend Douglas Murray wrote in his last book, you know, when he wrote his...
Why do you think they think that, Jake? Because of the powers of the... So the reason that conservatives think the way they think is that they are represented by a system that represents them, because they are the socioeconomic group in charge of the state. And because they, straight, like heterosexual, white, cis folks, have been, for a long, long time, the desired standard by which to live in this country. They are no longer the standard. And this brings them discomfort. Because, I mean, it's for a lot of reasons. There's an incongruence. There's a what's the word I'm looking for? It is a dissonance. There's a dissonance between the concept of I am right about how to live your life because I live my life this way, and I was told I was supposed to live my life this way. And it's worked. I'm economically prosperous. I have a family. I've won. Are you happy though? No, but I'm doing what I'm supposed to. Your dad's probably like this. There's a dissonance between that and then being told they're wrong. And when they're told they're wrong, what that means for a lot of them is that, holy shit, right? I live my life this way. If I'm wrong about this, then that means my life is wrong, and that's fucking scary. Now, that might not be their conscious thought process, but that's essentially what it comes down to when they freak out about new stuff, right? The idea of conservatism is to keep what was and never move past that because it's scary. Guess who always loses in the long run? That. Because, as it happens, people are who they are. And until we get to the point where we are truly like a culture that likes freedoms and likes that people can be who they are, I mean, these people we're gonna have to contend with these people all the time. And here's the difference. I said this to Charlie Kirk on Twitter, and his fans really didn't like it. And I think it's still true. I don't want Charlie Kirk's way of life to go away. I don't want to impose my way of life onto Charlie Kirk. He wants to impose his way of life onto me. These are fundamentally different. You can be a right-wing religious person with a quiver full. You want 8 kids. You have a wife. You're the head of the household, and she obeys you. You can have that life as long as they all consent to that. As obviously to the extent kids can consent to their parents' existence. If you find a wife that wants to consent to that lifestyle, I want you to have that life. I'm fine with that. If you want to live like a trad life, go for it. There's nothing in me that makes me want to stop you. because that's your life and your happiness and your pursuit therein. Now, of course, I have a disagreement when it comes to when your kids have opinions on that, whether or not you get to tell them what to do, of course. You shouldn't, of course. But that's always going to be a societal thing for as long as people exist. Like, there's always going to be parents that disagree with their kids about stuff, so that is what it is. You can't legislate that. But I don't want to. That's the point. I don't want anybody's life to be legislated into looking a particular way. That's where my politics essentially start. Is each person wants to live however they want to live. How do we do that? Now, obviously, there's going to be some. We're not always going to do whatever we want. Everybody knows that. Sometimes we need to do stuff we don't want. Whether it's shovel the snow out of our yard, or grow crops so that we can eat, or work on a building because there's a leak. Like, we always have to do stuff we don't want to do. But we need to strive for a society that is often doing what they want to do. You know what I mean? And if being trad is one of those things, then so be it. Go for it. I mean, but you can't tell other people how to live their lives.
His chapter on
And that's my politics. That's it. Anything that is a barrier to someone doing that is antithetical to my politics. And so I'm a leftist, because all leftist policy leads to that essential ending.
on the gays.
One hell of a stun lock. And this is all like
is the L's and the G's, the lesbians and the gays.
the stream shut down, ambiguous Samus. I had some technical difficulties for a little bit.
Separated that from the T chapter very effectively. These things have nothing to do with each other, and the more that we conflate these things, the more that we're going to be unable to have any level of this conversation in a functional manner.
Well, and the conflation is dangerous, because the assumption is that the workers, the students, made
fascism is hyper-hierarchical. I agree.
the same erroneous assumption back in the 1960s when they allied themselves with such people as the Hells Angels, for example, the student radicals. It's like, well, we're all marginalized. We all have that Marxist oppression in common, and that unites us. And
we are all oppressed by the system. Yeah. The Ender, thanks for the 33 months. Feels appropriate. After all this time, we circle back around to Dave Rubin, Jordan Peterson. True.
unite means that we're aiming for the same thing. It's like, well, we found out at Altamont that the Hells Angels weren't exactly aiming at the same thing, or maybe they were, in some nefarious manner. So the mere fact that, and it's also clearly the case that the more people that you aggregate on the margins and then attempt to bring into the center.
Dave has always been pretty trans-exclusionary, unless it's someone like Blair White.
The less likely you're going to get some homogenous viewpoint. And you might think, well, we don't need a homogenous viewpoint, but we certainly do if it comes to such things as surgical transformation of children who are more likely to be gay.
So then what do you think my role in that could be, or people like me that are watching this?
This conversation, right? Because this is uncharted territory. Like, you literally are in uncharted territory. And your attitude is something like, well, I'm already deviating a lot from the norm. And so maybe I should not deviate any more than I absolutely have to. And I would also say that should apply to everyone. It's like,
don't be too deviant, or Daddy Jordan won't like you.
Everyone's got their idiosyncrasies, and thank God for that. And we definitely need creative people, and we even need some creative weirdos, because God only knows when they'll come in handy. But the rule of thumb should still be, to the degree that you're able to uphold the norms and ideals of the collective society, you have a moral obligation to do that.
I fundamentally disagree yet again. I don't think a human being has any moral or ethical obligation to live a way that would be antithetical to their nature. I disagree. Unless that nature is to harm or otherwise negatively impact the freedoms of those around them. So, like, I'm a better libertarian than any libertarian. It's so weird. Every time libertarians talk, it always ends up into some sort of hierarchical, I'm actually, I want libertarianism because I would actually be the king that owns all the water and everyone would be my subjects. That's why I want to be a libertarian. Why I want to be a fucking libertarian, well, I wish libertarian meant what it means, or should mean. Why I like freedom is because I don't want anyone to be king over anybody. I don't want to be a fucking king. That sounds terrible. That sounds so annoying. I don't want to have any sort of control over your lives. In fact, if I ran for president, I would run on the following. This is me running for president right now. Day 1, I get rid of as many powers over your individual lives that the government could possibly have. Now, maintaining like safety standards and housing standards and all that, but I don't want to know about your marriage. I don't care about your sexuality. I don't want to limit your health care by any state. I want you to have access to full health care. Education, I don't want to know anything about your demographics in regards to like any sort of legislation. I want everybody to have how many guillotines? I want everybody to have their freedoms and their ability to move in any direction within the country, having their survival necessities met at every level, so that the only thing that we have to pursue within the country is our own individual or familial success and happiness in whatever way that manifests. To not commodify anything that we need to live, and to only commodify those things that we want, as far as like luxuries and things. I mean, that seems so easy. And at the end of it, I would love to dissolve like the Senate. The president shouldn't be able to make executive decisions. Like we should dissolve a lot of these things into, like for instance, the legality of Supreme Court cases. Whatever. I'm fine if like we should run national laws the same way we run state laws. They should be propositions that we put on the ballot and we all vote on as a body politic. Do you want federal legalized weed? You can have state level. That's fine. State level propositions are great. We should have national federal propositions instead of legislators like this. Like the legislators can frame the thing. We vote on it. Now, I understand that there might be some kind of minutia that we're not going to be able to legislate. That's fine. But I mean, like it's pretty clear that some topics rise to the level of national vote and just popular vote. States' rights, Jake. I mean, I don't like states' rights, but I mean, like you're not going to be able to get away from it in this country for a while. Because I'm fine right now if that's how they want to run it. But if we, again, under the caveat that we federally have the ability to vote on these. You know what I'm saying? Lifetime appointments are disgusting, absolutely. They should have 9-year, 9 or 8, sorry, buddy. I don't know. We were saying like one Supreme Court justice every year, but I don't think they should only be 9 of them. I think there should be, frankly, I mean, you could do 1 for each state instead of senators.
You know, I wrote in my first book, and I think it was an idea I sort of morphed off something Peter Thiel once said to me. That
yeah. We've talked about how I would organize the government before, and that is, it wouldn't involve only 9 justices.
That straight people spread the genes and gay people spread the memes. Meaning it's obvious. The genes part is obvious, how straight people multiply. But gay people, why did...
multiply? Why do they think that straight people beget straight children? Why is this happening?
Why did so much culture and art and music and so many interesting things about societies, wherever gay people are, why are the artists always living around the gay people? Why is that the place where all the kind of weirdos and marginal people are? And then that creativity is burst forth from that. So how do you combine those things? How do you take that?
Some of it might be, you know. So we know that intense creativity is a trait. Right, it's a temperamental trait. So you can be very intelligent, you can have a high IQ, and be low in creativity. Intelligence is a good predictor of creativity, but they are somewhat separable.
Mm-hmm.
So then the question is, well, what is creativity? And some of it is mutable identity. Like a creative person, the more creative you are, the less you're the same from moment to moment, hour to hour, and day to day. Well, almost by definition, right? You're a shapeshifter and a changer, a trickster. And the boundaries of conception that bound you are much
The boundaries of conception that bound you. Nice.
looser if you're creative. And so it's possible that, like, it's very difficult to account for homosexuality from a biological perspective, right? Because you would assume that if anything was going to be disappear in the course of sequential reproduction, the inability to reproduce would be at the top of the list.
Not a mathematician, but
It's not the inability to reproduce. It's actually the lack of desire to do so. What? I'm pretty sure all gay people have functioning gonads. You know, as far as, like, or not all, obviously, but, you know, like, the baseline is that everybody can reproduce. It means that they just don't have the sexual desire to do so. That's it.
but it doesn't really
well,
add
clearly,
up. Yeah.
clearly.
Yeah.
And so what that has to mean, it has to mean something like there are reproductive benefits to some of the factors that tilt towards homosexuality that are so powerful that they counterbalance the negative consequence of being unable to reproduce.
I think it just means some people are predisposed to feel a certain way in their attraction, and it's whatever. Like, what? No. No. Biological. Obviously, straight people having kids should have straight people. That's obvious to everyone. No, it isn't.
And it might be that a fair bit of that manifests itself on the creativity side, you know, because and I would say that the kids who are most likely to be, we studied at Harvard, I never did publish this for a variety of reasons, when cutting and piercing first became popular, I was very curious about whether or not that was a marker for psychopathology.
Cutting and piercing? His initial reaction to people getting piercings was, I wonder if they're psychopaths. I assume he means cutting like self-harm?
Right, for the proclivity towards mental illness. And before it became popular, it was a subculture thing, right? It was carnies and circus types, like marginal people, prisoners. It was a real subculture art form, piercing and body modification. And then all of a sudden it went mainstream. And the question is, well, who was on the forefront of its introduction to popular culture? So we
Well, I mean, not white waspy folks in Middle America, that's for sure.
We studied a whole bunch of people. This was very early on in the process to try to find out if they showed signs of mental illness or if it was a consequence of temperamental variability.
Everyone shows signs of mental illness. Everyone. Jordan Peterson more than most.
And what we saw was that there was no sign whatsoever that it was associated with mental illness. It all loaded on openness.
Oh, weird.
So if you were more creative, more mutable,
It's so funny. He went in thinking, are these people psychopaths? And then turns out, nope.
more able to shift shape, let's say, and perhaps more likely to, and I don't know, I don't think there's any data on this, if people who are high in openness are more likely to show some signs of same-sex similar attraction. Wouldn't surprise me a bit because they're
sort of.
You know, that's what I thought too. I'm pretty open about it. Again, it just isn't in me, man. I don't know. It is what it is. I've said it before, I'll say it again. I have the ability to swim in a sea of dicks if I chose to, and I do not choose to. And literally every day, I don't choose it. I don't know, maybe someday. It just doesn't seem ideal to me right now. Like,
Sort of sounds right.
well, their
right?
conceptual boundaries are the boundaries are thinner and more porous, so it could easily be the case. So it could be if there is an overlap
he just is so wrong from a fundamental, like the first step is so wrong.
with creativity, that would explain the genetic tilt that would keep homosexuality in the population. But it would also explain what does, especially on the male homosexual front, there does seem to be an axis of creativity there. And so it is the case that, well, certainly at least by stereotypical reputation, there is a higher proportion of gay people among the creative types than you would expect.
So to go into really dangerous territory then, if we haven't done it so far, I mean, does what you're saying right there sort of show you why they're going after kids right now? So the idea is they're going after kids because they're grooming them. And I think a lot of people think that means they're grooming them for sex. I'm not exactly sure that's right.
Wow.
I think they're grooming them for something more perverse in a way.
And that's all you get unless you sign up to Daily Wire Plus. The more perverse thing is to make them gay. I don't know.